Chapter 4200. He-Jing's ward was on the 18th floor. Because it was almost lunchtime, there were a lot of people taking the elevator. While the three of them were being watched, their backs were pressed against the elevator wall. Xia Jinyuan tried to block Yi Qian a few times, but in the end, this fierce soldier on the battlefield could only retreat in defeat in front of ordinary people. Yi Qian watched as the two of them were almost pressed against the elevator wall. He pursed his lips and laughed unkindly. When the elevator reached the 8th floor, a man with a big belly squeezed in like a meatball. As the elevator let out a long beep of an overweight alarm, the people in the elevator were squeezed by the man again. Xia Jinyuan and Li Jinyan, who were already pressed against the wall, felt like it was their first time encountering such a cramped elevator. For a moment, the two of them looked tense as if they were about to face a disaster. Yi Qian, who was trying hard to hold back his laughter, felt like his stomach was going to cramp. The two of them, ha ha ha, ha ha ha, it was so funny. They were squeezing into the elevator like they were facing a great enemy. No one else could be like them. In the end, the man with a big belly who still wanted to enter the elevator was escorted out by the ordinary people in the elevator. They had already called the police because they were overweight, so how could they still enter? They weren't afraid that the elevator would fall. When the elevator reached the 18th floor, there were fewer people in the elevator. The two Special Forces soldiers who were holding their breaths and walking out of the elevator let out a long sigh of relief. They were already nervous from taking the elevator, but this was their first time encountering such a situation. The two of them had a tacit understanding not to mention such embarrassing things. However, Yi Qian, who was walking in front of them, was still trembling as he tried to hold back his laughter. In the ward, He-Jing and Su-Wen had already packed up. They had even completed the discharge procedures. They were just waiting for the nurse to send over the medicine that they needed to take back to school before they could pack it up and leave. When Yi Qian walked in, the two of them looked over at the same time. Su-Wen was already laughing meaningfully. If she were to describe it in another decade, the smile on her face would be the smile of an experienced driver. Before he could finish laughing, he suddenly stopped. Su-Wen saw Xia Jinyuan, and then he saw another unfamiliar man with a cold temperament who dared not look him in the eye. This. Who is this expert? How come all the people her little Jane Eyre knew were all experts? My brother. Yi Qian hooked her arm around Li Jinyan's wrist and raised her chin slightly. She looked much more proud than when she introduced her boyfriend, Xia Jinyuan. You have a brother, you're amazing. That's right, having a brother was amazing. Su-Wen and He-Jing immediately tensed up. When Li Jinyan reached out to shake their hands to show his courtesy, the two of them reflexively saluted him. They were just short of greeting him. Greetings, Chief. Their actions didn't cause Li Jinyan's expression to change. He very naturally returned the military salute to the two of them, resolving the awkwardness between the two idiots. So awkward, so awkward. They didn't know why they saluted first when they saw Yi Qian's brother move his arm. For them to salute reflexively, it was certain that Yi Qian's brother was a soldier. What a guy! Her boyfriend was a soldier, and so was her brother. Student Yi Qian, do you plan to stay in the army and stay in the army when you return home? Li Jinyan did not let the girls introduce himself first. After the salute, he tried his best to relax his usual cold expression and took the initiative to introduce himself. Hello, I'm Yi Qian's brother, Li Jinyan. If you don't mind, you can call me brother like her. Chapter 4201. His surname is Li. Does that mean he's not her biological brother? Why do they look like biological brothers? No, that's not right. Jane Eyre had mentioned before that she was the only child in her family. Both her parents had passed away, and she had a mischievous cousin who came to her school. However, she had never mentioned that she had a brother. Is he her godbrother? Su-Wen took the lead and extended her hand to introduce herself. Hello, brotherly. I'm Su-Wen, Jane Eyre's roommate and comrade. We're from the same class. He Jing also extended her hand to introduce herself. She was much more restrained than Suwon. The smile on her face was a little stiff. Hello, Brother Lee. I'm He Jing. I'm also from the same class as Jane Eyre. We live in the same dormitory. Hello. Lee Jinyan extended his hand and gently shook their outstretched hands in a gentlemanly manner. Although he had a cold personality and looked unapproachable, he would never make things difficult for others. The gentlemanly demeanor under the cold exterior made the two of them relax a little. Their thoughts were written all over their faces. Li Jinyan and Xia Jinyuan saw through them immediately. Yi Qian smiled and said, "He's my biological brother. The situation is a little complicated. I'll tell you about it later." Have all the procedures been completed? If not, let's go and do it now. We'll have lunch outside and then go back together. Suwon felt that eating with Yi Qian's boyfriend and Yi Qian's biological brother, she was worried that she would have indigestion. However, she definitely had to go. He Jing said, "All the procedures have been completed. We're just waiting to get the medicine. I think it's almost done. I'll go and ask." She didn't dare to stay in the ward. Yi Qian's boyfriend already had a strong aura. Now, another powerful biological brother had come. He Jing felt so pressured that she couldn't breathe properly. Suwon also felt the same. She immediately said, "I'll go with you." After saying that, she pulled Yi Qian and smiled at the two people who made her heart tremble. Then she pulled He Jing and the three of them left the ward together. Coming out of the ward, Suwon patted her chest and said with lingering fear, "Oh my God, I'm so nervous. Standing in front of your boyfriend and brother, why do I feel like I'm being inspected? I don't even dare to breathe." "Me too. I was so nervous that I almost fainted." He Jing didn't pat her chest. From her relaxed expression, it could be seen that she was no less nervous than Suwon. "Your biological brother is obviously a powerful biological brother. Little Jane Eyre, if your boyfriend dares to bully you in the future, you don't have to look for anyone else. Your biological brother will definitely work." He Jing was right. If Xia Jinyuan dared to bully Yi Qian, his biological brother, Li Jinyan, would be the first person who wouldn't let him off. In the ward, Xia Jinyuan laughed and said, "Look at you. You scared the two girls away. You should at least smile. Don't be so cold. Be careful that you won't be able to find a girlfriend. Yi Qian and I are still waiting for Big Brother to bring sister-in-law back. You knew that they were girls, yet you still touched my sister." Li Jinyan hit the nail on the head. Xia Jinyuan couldn't help but cover his mouth and cough softly. "That's different. They're not mature enough. When they see you, they're like mice that see a cat. They can't handle it." What he meant was that Yi Qian was mature, so he had the nerve to touch him. Li Jinyan glanced at him coldly and spat out 4 words, "Shameless, lecherous." Last night, he had wanted to scold him, but because Yi Qian was present, he held back. Now that Yi Qian was gone, Li Jinyan's gloomy mood finally eased a little after he said those 2 words. Chapter 4202. Shameless and Lecherous. He must want to talk to his sister alone. I must be wary of this guy. Hearing these words, Xia Jinyuan's mouth twitched a few times. He was just being intimate with his girlfriend. How did it become shameless and lecherous in his brother-in-law's eyes? "Fine, fine, fine. You're my brother-in-law. You're my brother-in-law. You're right. I won't say anything else. When his brother-in-law finds a girlfriend, he'll have plenty of opportunities to turn the tables on me." It was already noon when they left the hospital. The group of 5 did not eat near the hospital. Instead, they chose to eat at a place closer to the school. The biggest problem with eating near the school was that they could run into returning students at any time. After 3 groups of students came over to greet Yi Qian, Xia Jinyuan got up and closed the door to the private room. He did not run into any students from his class. All he met were students from other classes. One of them was even a group of 4th-year students. His girl was indeed a famous figure in the National Science University. There was probably no one who did not know her. Xia Jinyuan, who had been to the military academy many times, knew that Yi Qian was very popular with the students. However, Li Jinyan did not know this. But he was able to see it with just one meal. There was a group of fourth-year students and two groups of third-year students from different classes. It was obvious how popular his sister was. He Jing and Su Wen were very calm. They were already used to it. Whenever they walked on campus, they would stop countless times to chat with the students who recognized Yi Qian. In the end, the two of them discussed that they would definitely separate from Yi Qian when they came back from the laboratory. The laboratory was already far away. If they were delayed on the way back, it would take them an hour to get back to the dormitory. The meal did not cause them any indigestion. Instead, the two of them noticed Li Jinyan and Xia Jinyuan's table manners. They could really tell whether a person came from a good family or not just by eating a meal. Even when eating, there was a sense of elegance. Su Wen, who had always thought that she had come into contact with the upper class, felt ashamed. She had only come into contact with the upper class. However, the people and things that Yi Qian came into contact with were far beyond her reach. After returning to school, Su Wen said to He Jing, "I feel that Jane Eyre's family background is not simple. Since Brother Li is Jane Eyre's brother, why is Jane Eyre's surname not Li but Yi? One follows their father's surname, and the other follows their mother's surname. It's easy to understand." He Jing, who was tidying up her things. So what if her family background? Su Wen took out a small stool and sat down. She thought about it carefully. After thinking for a while, she shook her head and said, "No, they definitely don't follow their mother's surname. Xiao Jian Er's mother's surname is Sunday. Why are you thinking so much? Could it be that Yi Qian's family background is not simple? Could it be that he is not the Yi Qian we know? Hurry up and pack your things." He Jing did not want to think about these things. There was nothing to think about. Yi Qian was Yi Qian. She only knew Yi Qian. As for the identity of Yi Qian's brother and the identity of Yi Qian's boyfriend, it had nothing to do with her. Su Wen, who always liked to ponder, thought about it. That's right. Yi Qian was still the Yi Qian they knew. Since that was the case, what was there for her to ponder about? She stopped thinking about it and started packing her things. Yi Qian, who did not return to his dormitory, was sitting in the dean's office. Ever since she and Xia Jinyuan entered the dean's office, the entire office was filled with the dean's laughter. Chapter 4203. When Xia Jinyuan was in his first year of university, the department head was still his instructor. Even though Xia Jinyuan had graduated many years ago, he still kept in contact with the department head. The department head was very happy to have his favorite student. When he saw that Xia Jinyuan was familiar with Yi Qian, who had always been a popular figure in the school, he exclaimed, "Birds of a feather flock together. The two of you are the best examples. I didn't expect that you would know Yi Qian even though you're so many years older than him. You're really fated to know him." Xia Jinyuan smiled and looked at his girlfriend, who was sitting respectfully with her back straight and her hands naturally placed on her knees. It was the standard sitting posture for a meeting. The smile in his eyes was like ripples of water. He agreed and said, "That's right, I'm really fated to know her. I was quite surprised when she introduced herself as a student of the National University of Science and Technology. I didn't expect my junior to be so amazing." "Ha ha ha ha, your junior isn't just amazing. She's really amazing. She shocked the instructor during the first-year military training and made the third-year students panic. She's even better than you. She's as elegant as you were back then. All the leaders of our school have great hopes for her. We hope that she can maintain her current results and become an outstanding student when she graduates. She'll be promoted to a captain directly." "Captain?" Xia Jinyuan's smile became meaningful. "Captain? No, no, no. With Little Fox's current military achievements, she should be a major. Lieutenant colonel was still not mature enough. She would need to cultivate for another 3 years or so. Their military ranks were all based on military merit. It wasn't something that would be promoted every 3 years after graduating from a military academy. First lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, all of them had earned their military merits by risking their lives. The value of their military medals was very high. The dean knew that the two of them knew each other. In order to encourage Yi Qian to work harder, he picked out a lot of things that Xia Jinyuan had never said to Yi Qian before. Every time he said something, he would laugh and scold him, "This brat." His tone of disdain did not hide his admiration. Yi Qian listened with great interest. Li Jinyan went straight to the director's office. After he was done with his work, he went to his room to rest for a while before he received a call from Xia Jinyuan. It was already 5 o'clock in the afternoon, time for the students to have dinner. Yi Qian did not eat with the two of them and returned to class for her meal. She only rushed over to meet with Li Jinyan at night after everyone had gathered. When she arrived at school, Yi Qian's schedule was quite tight. She didn't even have time to date Lieutenant Colonel Li Jinyan, who was also staying on campus. They met in a hurry at night and chatted for less than half an hour before leaving. There were too many things to do, so there was no time to date. Fortunately, Xia Jinyuan did not rest all day. The next morning, the dean grabbed him to teach the fourth-year students. In the end, he was even busier than Yi Qian. He even had to squeeze out time for lunch. When Xia Jinyuan stayed on campus, he only wanted to walk around the campus with Yi Qian and enjoy school time while she was resting. Who would have thought that he would be so busy that Yi Qian came to find him? This completely went against his original intention of staying on campus. He didn't have much time, but Li Jinyan had a lot more time. He could have lunch with his sister at noon, go to the training ground to watch Yi Qian in the afternoon, and have dinner together in the evening. When Xia Jinyuan found out about this, he gritted his teeth. When the third day ended, he immediately went to find the dean and said that he only had 10 days of leave. He asked the dean to let him off and let him rest well for the next 3 days. Chapter 4204. The dean felt that it wasn't very nice of him to take up all of Xia Jinyuan's time, so he smiled and let him go. "Ha ha, thank you for your hard work. The students have responded well, so I can't bear to see you leave. Yuan, you should come back to your alma mater more often in the future. Take some time to teach your juniors." In order to see Yi Qian as soon as possible, everything was negotiable. The dean nodded and let him go with a smile. Xia Zhongxiao walked out of the dean's office, his sour face instantly turning into a smug one. His target, Yi Qian. Tonight's dinner must be with his girl. Thinking that he would soon be able to dine with the girl he loved deeply, Lieutenant Colonel Xiao was only short of whistling. Tap tap tap. He happily walked down the stairs. Suddenly, Lieutenant Colonel Xia abruptly stopped walking. His originally straight path slowly turned into a backward step. He wanted to change the way he went downstairs. He planned to go up to the second floor and leave the office through the pipe from the window. Would it be too late? What's wrong? You still have things to do? Xia Jinyuan turned around and looked coldly at Xia Zhongxiao, who had taken 2 steps back. His thin lips moved slightly and his words were as clear as an announcer's. "If you're not done, then I'll wait a little longer." Obviously, Xia Zhongxiao didn't have time to change the way he went downstairs. Xia Jinyuan had already caught him. "I suddenly remembered that there's something I want to talk to the dean about. Big brother, are you looking for me for something urgent?" Xia Jinyuan didn't move. He stood 2 steps away from the first floor and had no intention of going downstairs. Xia Jinyuan was the most difficult person to deal with in Little Fox's family. He was even more difficult to deal with than his future father-in-law. He also had a bad temper. Xia Jinyuan, who was in a hurry to have dinner with Yi Qian, smiled and looked at Xia Jinyuan, waiting for him to make things difficult for him. My sister was called out by an instructor just now. She didn't have time for dinner. Since you have been waiting for me, there must be something urgent, Xia Jinyuan answered smoothly. Then, he walked down the stairs and walked towards his brother-in-law. Don't you have something to talk to the dean about? It's not a big deal. We can talk tomorrow. Is that so? Li Jinyan sneered. Xia Jinyuan, who had always been thick-skinned, nodded elegantly and replied with perfect articulation, yes. Since he had no choice, he would accompany Xia Jinyuan. In response, the corners of Li Jinyan's mouth twitched slightly. He couldn't understand how someone could lie without feeling guilty or panting. Commander-in-Chief Xia was a righteous person. He was a man of his word and disliked sweet talk. His son seemed to be his natural nemesis. With Commander-in-Chief Xia's temperament, it was a miracle that Xia Jinyuan was still alive. Li Jinyan looked at Xia Jinyuan, who was standing in front of him. He had a scoundrel's temper, a roguish smile, and a face that was so shameless that he wanted to kick it several times. He frowned slightly and asked a question that had been on his mind for a long time. Do you and Commander-in-Chief Xia have to fight every time you meet? Xia Jinyuan narrowed his eyes at his question. He had to think about how to answer it. Xia Jinyuan, who had an answer in his heart, smiled and said, when we were young, the only thing we didn't do was shoot each other with guns. I always thought it was a miracle that I was able to grow up alive under my father's watch. Chapter 4205. Li Jinyan's face froze for a second when he heard this. He nodded and said calmly, I think so too. It's a miracle that you're still alive. You're not the only one who thinks so. Even Old Master and Old Madam think so. That's why the Commander-in-Chief said that if I don't marry Yi Qian into the family Xia, I won't be allowed to enter the family Xia's house. He will recognize Yi Qian as his goddaughter. My dad was probably waiting for this day. Every time he meets with Yi Qian, he will remind Yi Qian not to be nice to me, not to be too nice to me, and not to give in to me. I'm starting to suspect that I'm not a child of the family Xia, but a child left behind by the Commander-in-Chief's enemy. Li Jinyan wanted to laugh, but he didn't want to laugh in front of the guy who was going to spar with him later. He didn't want to lose his momentum before the battle even started. However, Li Jinyan's expression softened a lot. From Xia Jinyuan's words, he could tell that Commander-in-Chief Xia liked his sister a lot. I planned to spend the night with Old Master and Old Madam before coming back to look for Yi Qian the next day. However, when they heard that I couldn't stay at home, they immediately arranged for a car and booked a plane ticket. It took them less than 10 minutes to get me to the car. I already have a feeling that when Yi Qian marries me one day, I will no longer have a place in the family Xia. The whole family will only dote on Yi Qian, and I, who's not very likable to begin with, will have no choice but to stay wherever it's cooler. Xia Jinyuan let out a long sigh with a melancholic expression. Li Jinyan raised his eyebrows and said 2 words to express his opinion. That's right. Not bad. In the future, when his sister married into the family, he would be quite assured. Grandpa was still the cleverest one. He knew early on that family Xia was the best choice for Hui Yao, so from the beginning, Grandpa was very happy for Hui Yao to be with Xia Jinyuan. Other than not wanting Hui Yao to get married early, Grandpa was very satisfied with everything. Li Jinyan led Xia Jinyuan to the on-campus training hall. Xia Jinyuan was very familiar with everything in the National University of Science and Technology, so he knew what was in front of him as soon as he turned the corner. Then, he also understood what his brother-in-law wanted to do with him. Let's get real today. Let's see how strong each other is, Li Jinyan said calmly. He then took the lead and entered the training center. Xia Jinyuan came in after him. Needless to say, when they arrived at the training center, they took off their clothes, smeared some talcum powder on their hands, and stretched their muscles and bones. Both of them knew what to do next. They shook hands with each other, and without saying anything, both of them threw punches at the same time. The last time they sparred with each other was a few years ago. After that, they did not spar again during training. At this time, neither of them would give in to the other. Every punch was like a gust of wind. If they hit, both of them would feel so much pain that their pupils constricted. Xia Jinyuan knew why Li Jinyan wanted to spar with him. It was because he knew that in the end, the person who would stand by Yi Qian's side would not be him, the older brother, but him who was now his boyfriend and would become his husband in the future. He needed to know if he was strong enough to personally hand Yi Qian over to him. Even though he already knew that Xia Jinyuan was strong enough to stand by Yi Qian's side, his brother-in-law was still worried and wanted to give it a try himself. After giving it a try, he would not object again. After giving it a try, if his brother-in-law won, then Xia Jinyuan's road to marriage would be extended. Therefore, he had to win today, and he had to win beautifully. Chapter 4206. One was fighting for his little sister's happiness, while the other was fighting for his own happiness. When the two of them fought, they were like ferocious wolves defending their territory. Every punch and kick they exchanged was filled with ruthlessness. The sparring session was so intense that some of the students training in the training center hurriedly moved away from the two of them. Were these the new instructors? So vicious the moment they entered the arena? Killing intent and hostility coexisted. Although they could not see their physical forms, the surrounding students could feel it. Some instructors immediately separated the students to prevent them from being accidentally injured. This was no ordinary sparring session. If they were accidentally injured, it would not be an ordinary injury. Even their bones might be broken. The instructors with serious expressions separated the students. Some instructors even called the duty room just in case. This attracted the attention of the duty room, who immediately contacted the General Affairs Office. In less than 5 minutes, the serious instructors knew who the two combatants in the sparring session were. They did not know their specific identities or positions. They only knew that one of them, a lieutenant colonel surnamed Xia, was once an influential figure in the 9th batch of the military academy, while the other was said to be a special forces soldier sent by the Navy. Knowing that the two were old acquaintances, the crisis was averted. The instructors quickly ordered the students to sit down. Wearing the Army's physical fitness uniform, an influential figure in the 9th batch of our military academy, equivalent to the current influential figure Yi Qian. His overall physical fitness is especially good. He is also one of the 5 outstanding students of that batch, and his overall ranking is first. Wearing the Navy's physical fitness uniform, a special forces soldier from the Navy who came to our academy on a business trip. Judging from his skills, he is also very strong. This is a battle between experts. Everyone, open your eyes wide and watch carefully. Don't blink. Do you hear me? Yes. The instructor's explanation made the students sitting cross-legged straighten their chests and respond in unison. They were very serious about watching how the real masters of combat were going to fight. Do you see? Every move they make is a fatal move. When you raise your leg, your lower body must be steady. Once your lower body is lost, the enemy will immediately have the opportunity to strangle you. The attacker and the defender are both very strong. Both sides can easily avoid the fatal moves or minimize the danger. What you all need to learn is how to minimize the danger. Golden hook upside down. Once the enemy's head is hit, his cervical vertebrae may be dislocated and he will die. Look, the Marine representative quickly retreated, blocked the attack with one arm, and resolved the crisis. The instructor had never seen such an exciting fight before. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. He was so excited that he clenched his fists, wishing that he could go up and participate. The instructor was excited when he saw this, and so were the students. They were all freshmen. Although they had been in contact with combat since the start of school and had seen combat between instructors in the military academy, They had never been as exciting as what they were witnessing now. With one look, they could tell that they were not on the same level. The two of them only had eyes for each other. They were enemies that they had to defeat. All of their attention was focused on winning the battle. Xia Jinyuan swung his right arm, which was in pain from Li Jinyan's side kick. With a cold look in his eyes, he clenched his fist again and moved his long leg slightly. He took the initiative to attack again. Even from a distance, one could feel how powerful the punch was. The direction of his punch seemed to be aimed at Li Jinyan's head. It was so fast and fierce that the students sitting and watching suddenly broke out in cold sweat for the Navy representative. Chapter 4207. In the eyes of the students, Xia Jinyuan was the representative of the army and also their senior, while Li Jinyan was the representative of the Navy. Li Jinyan did not retreat because of Xia Jinyuan's direct attack. He only dodged with his upper body. There was also a point to the east and go to the west in martial arts. It looked like this, but it was not. The two of them had trained together before, so they had a certain understanding of each other's moves and routines. When Xia Jinyuan punched, Li Jinyan's reflexes were almost conditioned. He knew that it was a feint. Sure enough, when he dodged, Xia Jinyuan's fist did not land. Instead, he raised his leg and swept. The students watching all widened their eyes. How can it be so fake? His fist turned into a leg sweep. The coordination between his upper body and lower body is so strong. He can immediately stop his fist and change to a leg kick. How can he be called an expert otherwise? This is real combat. It's all about killing moves. What we've learned is nothing compared to what they've learned. You two watch carefully. The instructor, who was watching excitedly, suddenly heard the students talking behind him. He turned his head and said sternly, "We can discuss after class." This was a professional combat class. For eyes were not enough to watch, yet they were still in the mood to discuss. The two students who were discovered by the instructor turned serious. They did not dare to be distracted and continued to watch seriously. The two people who were fighting did not notice that they had become a textbook. They also did not notice that there was an entire class of students watching them. Xia Jinyuan saw that his brother-in-law dodged his feint and counterattacked. He, who always liked to attack, clamped Li Jinyan's wrist and laughed softly. "It seems that it's not a good thing to know too much. I'm afraid it will take some time for us to exchange pointers. Then let's see who can last until the end," Li Jinyan said coldly after breaking free from Xia Jinyuan's grip. His hand went straight for Xia Jinyuan's throat. The spectating students broke out in cold sweat for the representative of the army, Xia Jinyuan. If he were to be punched, his Adam's apple would probably be smashed. The fight went on for 10 minutes, and the two of them only had a short exchange of 2 sentences. The students below the arena broke out in cold sweat for them, and secretly sucked in countless breaths of cold air. Their hearts trembled as they watched, but the two combatants did not feel like they were fighting with their lives on the line. They knew what they were doing and how good their opponent was, so they were not worried that their opponent would really be defeated by them. At most, his body would be in pain for a few days. Now, his body was already hurting. Not only did his body hurt, but his fists also hurt. After Yi Jian finished his work with the instructors, he walked out of the administration building and saw Song Jiqiu striding toward the administration building. When she saw him, he also saw her. Since he was about to leave, he started to run. "Yi Qian, the instructor just informed me that you should hurry over to the training hall. He said that there are 2 combat experts sparring. The freshmen who are training in the hall are all watching from the sidelines. The exchange of blows between experts is quite exciting." Not knowing why, when Song Jiqiu mentioned that there were 2 combat experts sparring, Yi Qian suddenly thought of the 2 figures that he was most familiar with. "Go and have a look. I'm afraid that it will be over soon." Song Jiqiu also wanted to have a look. If the instructor had not insisted that she take Yi Qian there, she would have already run over by herself. She inexplicably thought that the two combat experts were the Yi Qian that she knew. Song Jiqiu did not need to urge him. After he finished speaking, she had already started to run. Both of them were wearing training uniforms, so they would not be caught by the pickets when they ran. There was a short distance between the administration building and the training hall, so they could only run. Chapter 4208. While running, Song Jiqiu said, "The drill master said that they are the real martial arts masters. It would be a pity if you didn't see them. He was afraid that I wouldn't come for you, so he ordered me to find you. It seems that they are really masters. Otherwise, the drill master wouldn't have asked you to go and have a look. Several people in our class have already gone. I guess they are interested in them now." Hearing that, Yi Qian ran even faster. Big Brother and Captain Xia were both very strong. She had only seen the two of them sparring once during the training. When they fought, it was really terrifying. The murderous aura was so strong that it seemed like it could really kill the other party. The students who were watching them would be scared. Even the drill masters would be stunned. Yi Qian was a little worried. If it were really her eldest brother and Captain Xia, their sudden fight was probably mainly because of her. Yi Qian, who was worried, ran faster again. Song Jiqiu had to speed up to catch up with her. When they arrived at the training hall, Yi Jianjian saw that there was already a circle of students sitting around. There were about 50 people in one circle and 70 in another. Among them were the students in her class. They were all sitting. No one was standing. Yi Qian went in and saw the two people fighting. As she thought, they were the two people she was most familiar with. Yi Qian could feel the fierceness between them even though they were separated by a circle. It had been 20 minutes since they fought freely. The drill master who asked Yi Qian to come over saw her. He raised his hand and quietly asked her to come over. The drill master sat in a good position in the front. If Yi Qian went over, she could clearly see the fight between the two martial arts masters. Yi Qian, whose face was tense, pursed her lips and went around them. 20 minutes have passed. They are still very strong. It won't be a problem for them to hold on for another 20 minutes. Watch carefully. It's a rare opportunity. The drill master said seriously because they couldn't teach Yi Qian anymore. What Yi Jian had learned was all about lethal combat, which was the combat between the two of them. As she sat down, she actually did not hear what the instructor said clearly. Her whole mind was focused on the two people who were fighting. They had already been fighting for 20 minutes. How much longer would they have to fight? Their fists collided head-on. The sound of the collision made the hearts of the students tighten. What the F***ck? The finger bones didn't break, right? They all heard the sound of the collision. Even if it didn't shatter, it would still be extremely painful. Yi Qian furrowed his brows. Things couldn't go on like this. Victory and defeat hadn't been decided yet, and the two of them would probably be in pain for a few days. She had to think of a way to end this. However, Xia Jinyuan found Yi Jian among the trainees, who were all wearing the same training uniform. Although he did not change his expression during the fight, his expression changed because of Yi Jian's arrival. Demon King, we're at 4 o'clock. Xia Jinyuan was able to find Yi Qian in a crowd of millions, just because he was looking at Yi Qian. Upon hearing this, Li Jinyan, who was shaking his hand, paused for a moment. Then, he coldly said, "It's just teaching." That was a good idea. Lieutenant Colonel Xia immediately understood the essence of it. It was just teaching, not fighting. The high-altitude alarm was dispelled. Then, Yi Qian heard Xia Jinyuan shaking his hand. Big Brother Demon King stopped shaking his hand. The two of them stood back to back and faced the trainees in front of them. One of them said, "Do you want to come up and give it a try?" The other said, "I'll teach you." The talkative one was Lieutenant Colonel Xia. The one who was concise was Demon Kingly. The trainees who were being watched by the two of them were excited. They stood up, but before they could take a step forward, they were scared. At that moment, the two of them who were acting didn't realize that they had dug a deep hole for themselves. Chapter 4209. The two students who stood up stood in the same place, hesitating. Let's give it a try. Well, they didn't dare. They were afraid that they would be knocked down by a combat expert. That would be awkward. Thus, the instructor sitting next to Yi Qian called out loudly, "Can I have this student next to me spar with the two of you?" Hearing this, Lieutenant Colonel Xia and Li Jinyan glanced at the instructor from the corner of their eyes. Both of them froze. If it was a blessing, it wouldn't be a curse. If it was a curse, it couldn't be avoided. They wanted to pretend that they didn't see Yi Qian, but who knew that they would encounter such an unreliable instructor who would actually ask Little Fox, his sister, to spar with them. At this moment, the two who had dug a hole for themselves were filled with thoughts. In the end, Big Brother Li Jinyan took a step back and said calmly, "Okay." He easily pushed Xia Jinyuan deeper into the hole. "Demon King, that's not very kind of you. You should at least go through thick and thin together," Lieutenant Colonel Xia said softly. "You're not a brother if you leave just like that." Lieutenant Colonel Li replied calmly, "I'm not your brother. I'm your big brother." "He's already admitting that he's my big brother?" Lieutenant Colonel Xia Jinyuan, who couldn't climb out of the hole, twitched his mouth. "Big brother, don't you feel guilty?" "No, I'm fine. Thank you for teaching me on the spot," Big Brother replied without a hint of guilt. He added, "Take care." Lieutenant Colonel Xia could only watch as his brother-in-law, Demon King Li, left. Then, he turned around. He was so frightened that he took a small step back. He didn't know when Yi Qian was standing behind him. He turned around and came face to face with him without any preparation. Li Jinyan sat behind the student and watched with a cold expression. "Hello, I'm looking forward to your guidance," Yi Qian saluted Xia Jinyuan. The slight smile on his face made Xia Jinyuan's knees go weak. This smile made his heart flutter. Xia Jinyuan returned the salute and smiled. "I don't dare to give you guidance. I'm just showing off in front of an expert." "Shall we begin?" Yi Qian asked politely. Thus, Lieutenant Colonel Xia became even more alarmed. However, Yi Qian's instructor reminded him, "Yi Qian, be careful. Don't let your guard down." As expected of an instructor, he was always able to educate his student. Lieutenant Colonel Li had already given this instructor 100 points in his heart. The applause started and Li Jinyan clapped as well. He shouted to the students, "Come on, come on! You can do it, senior sister." The freshmen shouted, "Come on, senior sister." The students in Song Jiqiu's class shouted, "Come on, Yi Qian." So did Li Jinyan. Xia Jinyuan, who had been forced into a corner, loosened his muscles and bones again. The smile on his face faded slightly, and at the same time, his fist was already out. His voice came along with the wind of his fist. "I want to see if your skills have improved over the past year." When he said this, it meant that he was serious. He was not just playing with Yi Qian casually. He really wanted to see if Yi Qian's skills had improved. Since he was serious, Yi Qian would naturally accompany him. Seeing that the representative of the army was as fierce as when he fought with the representative of the navy, the students became even more nervous. Song Jiqiu and the others were so nervous that they had already clenched their fists. Yi Qian was very good at fighting, but facing the representative of the army, how many moves could he resist? Would he get hurt? They became nervous, and the expression on the instructor's face became even colder. All the students held their breaths as Xia Jinyuan punched, and then slowly relaxed as Yi Qian dodged nimbly. The atmosphere in the training center became even more tense than before. Chapter 4210. Even though the army representative was their senior, he was in his 9th year and was not familiar with them. On the other hand, they all knew and were familiar with Yi Qian. Therefore, they naturally favored Yi Qian. They were more willing to see Yi Qian win. As for the instructor, they hoped so too. However, this was not something that would happen just because you wished it. If they wanted Yi Qian to win, they had to have the ability to defeat the army representative. Without the ability, they could only hope that Yi Qian would win. While the layman watched the show, the expert watched the skill. When Yi Qian dodged Xia Jinyuan's attack and counterattacked, the instructor straightened his back. At this moment, Yi Qian was using a military equestrian technique. The main characteristic of equestrian techniques was that there were many anti-joint moves that attacked vital points. Among them, crotch kicks were one of the most common moves. This was a compulsory combat technique for Israel's national defense, military, and law enforcement departments. The American FBI also used equestrian techniques, but the Chinese rarely used equestrian techniques and only slightly used them. However, Yi Qian's anti-joint moves and crotch kicks were not just slightly used equestrian techniques. The instructor's expression changed. It became very complicated. As an instructor, he did not know equestrian techniques, but his student Yi Qian did. Could it be that Yi Qian had been hiding his true abilities? Military equestrian techniques were simple and focused on killing the enemy. The first-year students had never come into contact with equestrian techniques, so they did not understand what kind of close-range combat Yi Qian was using. The male students only knew that Yi Qian's repeated crotch kicks made their crotch area tighten. Why did it look like a woman's self-defense technique? The number of crotch kicks he made was not an ordinary number. The male students in Yi Qian's class were extremely tense. This kind of technique, luckily they had not encountered it when they fought Yi Qian. Otherwise, if she kicked them in the crotch, they would be crippled. At this moment, the surrounding male students were filled with emotions. The male students who were in the same class as Yi Qian were rejoicing. Fortunately, Yi Qian had shown them mercy. Fortunately, they were not crippled. Yesterday, I sparred with her during training. Now I've survived. Even senior brother is having a hard time dodging. If it were us, I would have been hit by Yi Qian's first kick. A male student in the class told Song Jiqiu in this way. Song Jiqiu, whose facial expression was much more serious than that of the male students in the class, pursed her lips slightly. After a while, she said, what she used was makabi, which means close combat in Hebrew. Yi Qian uses military equestrian techniques. His moves look simple, but they are direct and effective. They are mainly used to kill the enemy. Watch carefully. The instructor definitely didn't expect us to see a side of Yi Qian that we don't know about. Are you talking about the military horsemanship? The student looked at Song Jiqiu with an expression that said, are you kidding me? Are you sure? We have never learned the military horsemanship. Although the male students had never seen the military horsemanship, the instructor had told them what kind of fighting skills the army used and what kind of close combat skills the soldiers of the special forces were used to. This was also what Song Jiqiu was puzzled about. Yi Qian went to class like them. After class, how could she have learned the military horsemanship? Moreover, it was obvious that she had received professional training. Could it be that she had learned it during the holidays? I have learned civilian horsemanship, so I know a little. After Song Jiqiu finished speaking, she became more attentive. Yi Qian had been her classmate for 3 years, but she was still a mystery. Chapter 42:11. The students who didn't realize what was going on had their left arms twisted by Yi Qian's sudden move. Her left arm, which was locked by the representative of the army, was now facing the representative of the army. In an instant, she reversed the situation and lifted her leg again. Without any hesitation, she kicked the representative of the army in the crotch. In the arena, there was a clear gasp. A few male students seemed to empathize with her. Their hands, which were on their knees, unconsciously moved to their crotch. Li Jinyan laughed. Li Jinyan raised his eyebrows slightly. That's right, his sister didn't treat Xia Jinyuan as her boyfriend, but as an opponent. It seemed that his sister could recognize her identity, both in and out of the arena. Xia Jinyuan also laughed. He had no choice but to let go of Yi Qian's right hand and hurriedly blocked another fierce kick to his crotch. He approached her and said helplessly, "If you use the horse gamma technique again, aren't you afraid that I won't be able to avoid it and get kicked in the crotch? Give me some leeway. I don't want it to be scrapped before it's even used once. How about we switch to another type of close combat? For example, a second ago, he was still smiling and talking to Yi Qian, but the next second, his eyes were sharp and fierce, and he greeted Yi Qian with a fierce and ruthless move. The surrounding students, including the instructors, were silent. The army representative was using the move he used against the navy representative. Xia Jinyuan used Sambo, which meant self-defense without weapons in Russian. Sambo was divided into two categories: sports and actual combat. The Sambo used by Xia Jinyuan was naturally an actual combat Sambo. Luke, a Special Forces soldier from the Signal Flag Special Forces, taught his partner very seriously. On the other hand, Xia Jinyuan learned very seriously. In less than 8 months, Luke had already lost to Xia Jinyuan several times. Although it was only a short time, Xia Jinyuan's Sambo was very impressive. Just now, Li Jinyan had suffered a few losses at his hands. Even now, his arms and thighs were still aching faintly. Yi Qian knew that Xia Jinyuan was very good at close combat. Faced with his ruthlessness, Yi Qian did not cower. He used his arms to block 2 of Xia Jinyuan's long kicks. The moment Xia Jinyuan retracted his leg, Yi Qian suddenly rushed forward and punched Xia Jinyuan's right armpit. Not only that, he also leaned to the side to avoid Xia Jinyuan's direct punch, and once again used his elbow to hit Xia Jinyuan's chest. Xia Jinyuan's moves became ruthless and ruthless. Similarly, Yi Qian's moves were not bad either. Her left elbow was fast and ruthless. Xia Jinyuan let out a muffled groan when it hit his throat. His expression changed slightly. She really did not show any mercy. She almost broke his ribs. "Not bad, you've improved a lot." Xia Jinyuan's expression changed slightly from the pain, but the smile in his eyes was very deep. In the more than a year since he left, his little fox did not stop moving forward. She had improved in all aspects. Yi Jian, who was sweating on his forehead, smirked coldly. He continuously kicked Xia Jinyuan's abdomen, thighs, and knees. He had no choice. He was much shorter than Xia Jinyuan. He couldn't reach Xia Jinyuan's chest. The eyes of the onlooking freshmen could not be any wider. Their senior Yi Qian was actually so powerful. The army representative was actually kicked by senior sister Yi Jian to the point where he had to parry her attacks. For a while, he couldn't fight back. Chapter 42:12. In the beginning, Yi Qian did not intend to fight with Xia Jinyuan. Even if she did go on stage, she only wanted to exchange a few moves. Who would have thought that Xia Jinyuan would suddenly attack, which instantly aroused Yi Qian's desire to win. She threw the idea of exchanging a few moves to the back of her mind. The more she fought, the fiercer she became. The more she fought, the more she wanted to fight. As for the close-range combat techniques she used, she did not pay much attention to them. It was not until later when Xia Jinyuan reminded her not to use Mega Jutsu that Yi Qian realized what was going on. Mega Jutsu's biggest feature was the crotch kick. She had used the crotch kick in front of many freshmen and several male students in her class. Although it was a type of close-range combat, it was better not to use it in front of other students. Yi Qian immediately switched to mixed combat. Mixed combat did not require much endurance, but mainly focused on the key points of the attack. Xia Jinyuan swept his leg over, but Yi Qian quickly blocked it with her leg. She then kneed Xia Jinyuan's abdomen, making it impossible for him to make a second attack. From kneeing to stepping close, Yi Qian, who used mixed combat, used more techniques to counter Xia Jinyuan's Sambo. The two of them went back and forth, and the surrounding students could not take their eyes off of them. They all stared with their eyes wide open, not daring to blink. After saying that Yi Qian had improved, Xia Jinyuan let out a soft eh? She had improved a lot. If we continue fighting like this, I'm afraid there will be more and more students watching. We have to end this soon. Xia Jinyuan felt that it was not a good time for the two of them to continue. He glanced around and said in a low voice, "Next time, let's find another chance to learn from each other." Yi Qian, who had already fought to her heart's content, was in a strong mood. When she heard Xia Jinyuan's reminder, she did not immediately withdraw her strength. Instead, she smiled and said in a low voice, "That depends on how you want to end this. My instructor asked me to go on stage and ask for your guidance. You should be the one to decide how to end this." He even purposely used honorific. Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "I'll clean up the mess, so you have to cooperate with me. There's no way to end this situation if it's one-sided." As the two of them exchanged punches, the spectating students could only see Yi Qian becoming more and more courageous as he fought, and their fists clenched tighter and tighter. They thought that Yi Qian would not be able to defeat the army representative. But now they felt that it was not impossible. Yi Qian was much stronger than they had imagined. The first-year students knew about Yi Qian, but they did not know much about her. They only knew that their third-year senior sister, Yi Qian, was very powerful. Even the male students had to admit defeat. What they knew was not even the tip of the iceberg. The students who knew Yi Qian the most were the students in the same class. However, when Song Zhiqiu and the others saw Yi Qian, who had not been defeated by the army representative in the arena for 15 minutes, they felt that they actually did not know Yi Qian very well. If they really wanted to know, they should have known that Yi Qian was very good at close combat. However, they did not. Like the first-year students, they did not know that Yi Qian was so good at close combat until today. At this moment, the back of the male student who had finished his combat training with Yi Qian on the first day of school during the May Day holiday was soaked in cold sweat. He was not rejoicing that he had survived a disaster, but he felt that he was lucky. No matter whether Yi Qian used mega arts or mixed combat, he could not fight against Yi Qian at all. If Yi Qian went on stage, he would be knocked down by one move. Chapter 42:13. The representative from the army used his elbow to lock Yi Qian's neck from behind. As Yi Qian was trapped, the atmosphere reached a climax. The students didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Was Yi Qian about to lose? Could he still get out of this predicament? Could he continue fighting? If he lost, they would feel that Yi Qian had actually won. He had lost to the representative from the army, but he had won over all the spectating students. Because no one could win against Yi Qian. Li Jinyan's eyes narrowed slightly. Xia Jinyuan was stricter with his sister than he had imagined. Right now, Xia Jinyuan didn't think that he was his sister's boyfriend, nor did he think that he had to give in to his girlfriend. He drew a clear line between the lines. Li Jinyan's eyes narrowed with a complicated look. Xia Jinyuan was undoubtedly a qualified soldier. Even though he was in love, he didn't lose his rationality. Li Jinguang, who had a complicated look in his eyes, suddenly didn't know how to face Xia Jinyuan. As a soldier, he admired Xia Jinyuan's rationality very much. However, as his sister's family, his heart ached for her. Suddenly, Li Jinyan didn't want to continue watching. He thought that he needed to think carefully. Right now, it wasn't about Xia Jinyuan and his sister, but about himself. He needed to re-evaluate their relationship. It wasn't that he wanted to stop them, but he felt that he needed to re-evaluate the way they interacted with each other. Li Jinyan stood up. The student sitting beside him sensed it and immediately turned to look at him. He asked softly, "Aren't you going to watch?" "Yes, I have something to take care of," Li Jinyan replied and stopped watching the two people fighting. The students thought that it would be difficult for Yi Qian to escape from Xia Jinyuan's elbow lock, but Li Jinyan didn't think it would be difficult. His sister was a special forces soldier, so she had to be good at escaping from attacks like this. Even if there was a dagger on her neck, as a special forces soldier, her sister would still have to save her from the dagger. His sister would definitely be able to solve the current predicament. Before Li Jinyan could walk out of the training center, Yi Qian had already escaped. First, she kicked Xia Jinyuan's knee with her hind leg. Then, she slammed her head into Xia Jinyuan's chin. Yi Qian successfully escaped. The instructor who taught Yi Qian close combat was the first to applaud. Another instructor said in a low voice, "Looks like Yi Qian has been holding back all this while. He hasn't shown his true strength yet. During the training, she has to show her true ability. How many people in or outside the class can be her opponent? What about us? Do you think you're a match for her? Did he have the confidence to knock her down?" "I didn't." Yi Qian's instructor replied in a low voice as he clapped. In return, the other instructor sighed softly. That was true. With Yi Qian's current close combat skills, the instructors really couldn't beat her. No wonder she had to hide her strength. Thunderous applause sounded. Li Jinyan, who was walking towards the door, turned his head and glanced at the two people who had finished their training. His gaze inadvertently met Yi Qian's. Li Jinyan strode out of the room. He would leave the rest to Xia Jinyuan. He had something to do, so he had to go. When Yi Qian saw this, she was both amused and angry. Why didn't he think about how to face me when he was fighting me? Wasn't it too late to feel guilty after the fight? Just now, Big Brother abandoned me like this. Now, he's abandoning me again, Xia Jinyuan complained. If he didn't complain now, when would he? Chapter 42:14. Amidst the thunderous applause, Xia Jinyuan, who was standing close to Yi Qian, felt wronged. Seeing that Yi Qian was unmoved, he said, "It was Big Brother's idea to spar at the training center. I was caught by Big Brother halfway and couldn't get away. So, Big Brother brought me to the training center." The trainees had already stood up. After saluting the trainees and the instructor, Yi Qian put down his arms and said calmly, "I'll talk to you later." Xia Jinyuan looked at his girlfriend who was walking towards the instructor. What should he do? He didn't feel like talking to her later. He still had to talk, even if Xia Jinyuan had to go against Yi Qian's wishes. After exchanging a few words with the trainees who came over to ask for advice, Xia Jinyuan took the opportunity to leave. Before he left, he deliberately looked at Yi Qian, who was talking to the instructor. Seeing that Yi Qian only looked at the back of his head, Xia Jinyuan felt uneasy and left. After walking out of the training center, Xia Jinyuan saw his brother-in-law, who had abandoned him, standing under the street lamp with his hands in his pockets. He looked cold and aloof, as if he didn't care about anything. He was all alone, and even the light that enveloped him seemed lonely. This was a very lonely person. In Xia Jinyuan's mind, an idea that even he thought was absurd flashed across his mind. Although it was absurd, Xia Jinyuan felt that he was right. Li Jinyan, who didn't fit in with the Li family, was indeed very lonely. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so close to the Fu family and cut off relations with his own family. Xia Jinyuan looked at the lonely Li Jinyan and slowed down his step. This brother-in-law of his was also a person who was hard to read. Li Jinyan, who was standing under the street lamp, also saw Xia Jinyuan walking out of the training center. The coldness in his eyes deepened. Walking out of the training center, which was only a few meters away, he thought a lot. He thought about the smile on Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan's faces when they were together. That smile was so sweet that it didn't hide the happiness in it. As an older brother, he could tell that his younger sister loved Xia Jinyuan very much. She fell in love with Xia Jinyuan, who used to be known as the Devil's Incarnate in his youth. She fell in love with someone who changed so much that he almost thought that Xia Jinyuan had a twin brother. Grandpa said that his younger sister was very happy with the family Xia, and that she had found the right person. And the family. and even uncle said there was no one more suitable for her than the family Xia. Uncle and grandpa and uncle were the only ones who didn't express any opinions. He had seen how ruthless Xia Jinyuan could be when dealing with certain matters. The reason why Du Jiai was still afraid of Xia Jinyuan was because Xia Jinyuan once dragged her from one end of the street to the other end of the street and directly dragged her to the entrance of a red light venue. The words he spat out were still fresh in his memory. "You like to scheme so much? You also like to trick people into coming to such places to bully them. It seems like Miss Du likes to sleep with thousands of people. Why don't you live here from now on? I'm sure Miss Du will be happy." How old was Xia Jinyuan at that time? He was only 16 years old. How old was Du Jie at that time? The 3rd year of middle school. It was also that time that Du Jiai hugged his leg for the first time and called him cousin for help. Of course, he didn't save her. He just took a glance and left on his bicycle without looking back. But he still couldn't forget what Xia Jinyuan said and the ruthless look on his face. Chapter 42:15. He was a person who would do anything to get what he wanted. That was what he thought when he was 17 years old. Later on, when he met Xia Jinyuan, who was also training with him, he still thought the same. Later on, he found out that Xia Jinyuan had changed. He found out that Xia Jinyuan had become his sister's boyfriend. He found out that Xia Jinyuan had helped his sister a lot before his sister returned to the Fu family. There was even a period of time when he thought that Xia Jinyuan was indeed a man that his sister could entrust her life to. However, every time he thought of Du Jiai's shrill scream when they were young, he inadvertently saw Xia Jinyuan's ruthlessness when he was young. When he thought about his relationship with his sister, he felt like something was stuck in his heart. Xia Jinyuan had a bad temper in their circle. Even he, who was not in the circle, knew about it. At the same time, he also knew that no matter how bad-tempered he was, he had strong principles and was not the type to get angry easily or make things difficult for others. So why was he so ruthless towards Du Jiai? In the past, Li Jinyan did not think that he needed to think about this. He even thought that Du Jiai, who looked sweet on the outside but was ruthless on the inside, deserved to be taught a lesson. But now it was different. A ruthless guy was with his sister. He had to get to the bottom of this. If Xia Jinyuan and Du Jiai had an ambiguous relationship when they were young, he would have warned Xia Jinyuan not to think that Du Jiai had turned over a new leaf. He had to get to the bottom of this. Xia Jinyuan had already walked over. Before he could speak, Li Jinyan said calmly, "My sister looks a little angry. How is it? Is she angry at you?" She was so angry that she kept kicking Xia Jinyuan's crotch. He glanced at her calmly. Xia Jinyuan turned sideways and said calmly, "Big brother, you were the one who started this, but you ran away first. Isn't it a little too late to ask if she's angry now? Isn't it normal for you to coax her when she's angry?" His brother-in-law's face darkened without any warning. Even his gaze became exceptionally sharp. "Could it be that you still don't want to coax her?" Xia Jinyuan suddenly realized that the famous Devil King could be quite annoying when he acted like a scoundrel. Big Brother was the one who got himself into trouble. He felt that things were not going well, so he passed the responsibility to me. Yi Qian is my girlfriend, so I will definitely coax her well. It's just that Big Brother's way of doing things is a little too disloyal. After all, we've climbed through the trenches together. They crawled through the trenches together. Then you have to thank the trenches that we once climbed together. The corners of Li Jinyan's mouth twitched. His cold gaze was like a knife scraping across Xia Jinyuan's face. "Xia Jinyuan, did you and Du Jiai have an ambiguous relationship?" This question was not just a little abrupt. No, it was not abrupt, it was shocking. It was so shocking that Xia Jinyuan choked on his breath and coughed violently. He was so shocked that Xia Jinyuan coughed so hard that tears came out of his eyes. Although he coughed so hard that tears came out of his eyes, Xia Jinyuan's gaze was exceptionally sharp. He suppressed the coughing in his throat and asked in a deep voice, "Where did you get the news from?" His deep voice was incomparably cold and sharp. Li Jinyan's heart instantly sank. His reaction was so big. Could it be that he had guessed correctly? So it's true? Li Jinyan, whose face had already darkened, asked fiercely, "Did you really have an ambiguous relationship with Du Jiai?" Chapter 42:16. You had an ambiguous relationship with Du Jiai? Yi Qian's cold voice came from behind them. She had only repeated what Li Jinyan had said, but the coldness in her voice was several times greater than that of Li Jinyan. Xia Jinyuan knew that things had gotten out of hand. He looked at Li Jinyan coldly, turned around and strode towards Yi Qian. "My brother, why did you say that all of a sudden? Is Auntie making things difficult for you again?" When Yi Qian asked, Xia Jinyuan instantly heaved a sigh of relief. That meant that Yi Qian hadn't misunderstood him. Big Brother suddenly said that. I also suspected that Madame Xiao had said something outside again. Xia Jinyuan used the word, again. It was obvious that Madame Xiao had done something similar in the past. Li Jinyan was puzzled by their conversation. Madame Xiao? Why was there another Madame Xiao? Who was Madame Xiao? I'll go ask my brother. Yi Qian held Xia Jinyuan's hand and walked in front of Li Jinyan like a protector. She said coldly, "Brother, did you hear some rumors?" Li Jinyan glanced at the men who were being protected by his sister, then looked at Yi Qian. His thin lips twitched slightly. He wanted to say, "Who's protecting who?" but he swallowed his words. "Ask him to answer whether he has or has not." "That's impossible." Before Xia Jinyuan could answer, Yi Qian had already replied, "Captain Xia can't have an ambiguous relationship with Du Jiai. What a tight protector." Li Jinyan felt a headache coming on. He wasn't an ordinary gangster when he was 16 or 17. He only turned over a new leaf later on. Yi Jian pursed her lips and couldn't help but smile when she used the word "turn over a new leaf." "I know he used to be a gangster. Grandpa Xia, Grandma Xia, and the Commander-in-Chief all told me. Brother, tell me, where did you hear about Captain Xia and Du? Don't put my name together with hers. I don't love her." Xia Jinyuan was not in a good mood, and his handsome face was frighteningly cold. He opened his mouth and said in a hostile tone, "I didn't know that there were such rumors in the capital. Are they bullying me because I haven't been in the capital for a long time? I once saw you dragging Du Jiai away with my own eyes. I even heard you say that since Du Jiai likes to scheme so much." Yi Qian looked at Xia Jinyuan and said, "My brother has seen it with his own eyes. Do you want to explain? Her man had an ambiguous relationship with Du Jiai?" Yi Qian refused to believe it no matter what. Thus, she let her man explain to her elder brother. As for her, there was no need for her to explain, because she trusted him. Xia Jinyuan frowned and said, "When did I ever?" Halfway through his sentence, Xia Jinyuan thought of an old incident that happened more than 10 years ago. His brows furrowed even more. "Are you talking about something that happened more than 10 years ago?" Li Jinyan nodded slightly. What else could Xia Jinyuan say? He was angry and amused at the same time. He told Yi Qian about the incident that happened more than 10 years ago. "I told you before that I had a feud with that woman. It was this feud. She schemed against the younger sister of one of my friends when I was still the crown prince. I dealt with her and dragged her from the streets to the entrance of a red light establishment at the end of the street." Xia Jinyuan glanced at his brother-in-law and smiled faintly. "I said some harsh words, but I didn't expect Big Brother to hear it. I remember that the woman even hugged Big Brother's leg and begged for help, but Big Brother ignored her and rode away on his bicycle." Chapter 42:17. It was something that happened more than 10 years ago. Xia Jinyuan didn't expect that it would be the main reason why Li Jinyan didn't accept him and Yi Jian. This made Lieutenant Colonel Xia so angry that he wanted to spar with his brother-in-law again. His explanation removed the stone in Li Jinyan's heart. So that was what happened. He had misunderstood. Sorry, I've misunderstood you. Li Jinyan apologized for his misunderstanding. Although his tone was faint, it was clear that he was sincerely apologizing. Now that Li Jinyan knew that he had misunderstood, his expression softened. He looked at the two of them holding hands and a faint smile appeared in his cold eyes. So it was all a misunderstanding. Fortunately, he clarified everything tonight. Otherwise, it would have continued. He looked at the men who were being protected by his younger sister and thought about the interaction between the two of them. Because there were no misunderstandings between them, he thought about it again and realized that the interaction between the two of them was different. He could see that their interactions were not one-sided, but mutual. Xia Jinyuan protected his little sister, and similarly, his little sister protected Xia Jinyuan. The love between his little sister and Xia Jinyuan was a love of equal strength. It was not a one-sided relationship where one of them relied on the other or protected the other. The two of them were evenly matched and neither of them would be a burden to the other. Thinking of this, the smile in Li Jin's cold eyes deepened. This time, he smiled as he looked at Xia Jinyuan. Xia Jinyuan, who was shocked by his words, took a small step back when he saw his brother-in-law's benevolent smile. Xia Jinyuan, I'm leaving my little sister in your hands. From now on, you will be the one who will accompany her for the rest of her life. If she is bullied or wronged, I hope that you will always be the first to know. I also hope that you will be the one who comforts her. Li Jinyan looked at Xia Jinyuan. His cold voice softened because of Yi Qian. I hope that when she is wronged or suffers, she will always think of you, not me, uncle or grandfather. She chose you and her heart will always be with you. If she is unhappy or angry, you will comfort her, make her happy, and make her laugh. This is what you must do. If you can't even make my little sister happy, I don't know what the point of choosing you is. I know that you can help, and I know that without you, my little sister would not be here today, but… Under the street lamp, Li Jinyan looked at Xia Jinyuan with a sharp gaze. But this is not important to my family. All we want is for my little sister to be happy. I hope that after she chooses you, she will always be happy. Xia Jinyuan, my little sister has suffered and suffered. She has endured blood and tears. This is the pain of our family. Now that she has returned home, we must shelter her from the wind and rain. We must make sure that the pain, guilt, blood, and tears of the past will never happen again. All we want is for my little sister to be happy for the rest of her life. I hope that you will be able to make her happy for the rest of her life. My little sister is in your hands. I beg you, as her brother, to take good care of my little sister. Please take good care of my little sister. Thank you. At this moment, the proud and lofty Li Jinyan put down everything for Yi Qian. As her brother, he begged Xia Jinyuan to take good care of Yi Qian. Yi Qian heard this and tears welled up in his eyes. Making Yi Qian happy is my greatest wish for the rest of my life. Xia Jinyuan answered Li Jinyan firmly. He only had two things for the rest of his life. First, to live up to his military uniform. Second, to make his lover happy for the rest of her life. Chapter 42:18. Yi Qian was someone who lacked love, but after meeting Uncle Zhen and Uncle Chun, returning to the Fu family, and being able to stand shoulder to shoulder with her loved ones, the love that she lacked and lost was slowly replenished. She filled up the empty hole in her heart that she didn't know when it would stop in her previous life. She didn't think of herself as a person who liked to cry. However, every time she saw the people around her who loved her deeply and cared for her deeply, afraid that she would be wronged, Yi Qian couldn't help but cry. Every time she cried, She wondered if she was really made of water. Otherwise, why would she cry so much? Therefore, most of the time after crying, Yi Qian felt very regretful. But after she regretted it, she still cried when she wanted to. Just like now. Teardrops flowed out of her eyes one after another until Li Jinyan couldn't help but laugh. Why are you crying like this? It's as if sixth brother and I bullied you. Li Jinyan didn't think that Yi Qian was crying because of him, so he conveniently dragged Xia Jinyuan into it. Okay, don't cry. We're not far from the entrance of the training center. When the students come out and see you crying, they will really think that we bullied you. What else could Xia Jinyuan say? Everything had to involve him. Fine, since Xia Jinyuan was his brother-in-law, he would let him have his way. Xia Jinyuan pursed his lips as he watched his brother-in-law gently wipe away his girlfriend's tears. He then saw his girlfriend leaning her forehead against his shoulder as she cried silently until her shoulders trembled. He slowly reached out his hand and pulled his girlfriend into his arms under his brother-in-law's cold gaze. He was domineering yet gentle. He gently stroked Yi Qian's back with one hand and said gently, "How much longer do you want to cry? You can't cry for too long. The freshmen won't come out, but I'm afraid that the students in your class will come out. If you continue crying, Big Brother and I will be surrounded by them. Neither of us will be able to leave." Li Jinyan glared at Xia Jinyuan. This fellow was indeed cunning. Just for a short while, he wanted to dominate his little sister. Why was her heart as petty as the tip of a needle? After that, Li Jinyan heaved a sigh of relief. He was so jealous that even he, her big brother, couldn't hug his little sister. It could be seen that although the devil's incarnate of family Xiao was very cunning, he really valued his little sister. The smile in her cold eyes was like a willow twig in March gently brushing across the water surface, gentle, full of spring softness. Knowing that he treated his sister with sincerity, she should be relieved. It was time for him to relax. The Devil King, who had never used his status as an elder brother to get close to Xia Jinyuan, raised his hand and patted his brother-in-law on the shoulder. "Take good care of him. I have something to do, so I'll leave first." She mouthed the words and even took light steps as she left. She did not let Yi Qian, who was trying to adjust his emotions, notice. When Yi Qian lifted his head from Xia Jinyuan's arms and turned around, he saw a slender figure walking slowly in the middle of the wide campus road. Dim yellow lights spilled all over the ground, like a small mountain, sometimes high and sometimes low, sometimes bright and sometimes dark. The slowly walking figure stepped on the flickering lights, and even the elongated shadow revealed a sense of loneliness and solitude. Just like that, he walked alone. No one accompanied him, no one loved him. It was as if he would be alone for the rest of his life. He walked alone for the rest of his life. Whether it was sadness or happiness, he didn't need others to know. Whether it was crying or laughing, he was all alone. Chapter 42:19. Yi Qian, who had finally stopped crying, felt her vision blur again. Her lips moved slightly as she said softly, "Brother, you will be happy. You will definitely be very, very happy." Grandpa was right. Her brother had been alone for too long and needed someone to accompany him. The rest of his life was still long. She would be happy with Captain Xia for the rest of her life, and her brother would also be happy with her sister-in-law for the rest of her life. "Brother, do you still remember the anniversary? I've seen her." Yi Qian raised her voice. Xia Jinyuan didn't even have time to cover her mouth when she suddenly said this. Her raised voice had already spread out. When Li Jinyan heard her voice, he paused in his steps and turned to look at his sister. He nodded slightly without replying. He remembered. A female police officer who dared to search his body. Why did he suddenly remember her? This was the first time an adult woman had touched him from his shoulder to his leg. When she touched him, he reminded the policewoman who looked like she lacked practical experience. If I were a criminal, when you're facing me for a body search and want to squat down to continue the search, I'll pull out a weapon and stab it into your neck from the side the moment you're half squatting. I'll cut your arteries and puncture your trachea, letting the blood flow back into your lungs. He had only reminded her out of kindness. Then his identity was questioned and he ended up at Dangue Garden. The impression was so deep that when Yi Qian mentioned it, she immediately remembered. Yi Qian still wanted to say something, but Xia Jinyuan had already covered her mouth and quickly rushed into the alley. His little ancestor, she had cried until she didn't even know where she was. She dared to make a ruckus in such a quiet place. Did she forget about the military academy's pickets? She had forgotten when she was talking, but now she remembered when she was running away. Student in front, stop. Don't run. Because the sound of the pickets had already been heard, they didn't know where they had been hiding. Li Jinyan looked at the three figures that suddenly rushed out from the shadows of the trees on the side of the road. He silently turned around. He didn't want to get involved in this kind of thing. Pickets. Any student who had attended a military academy would know that the pickets in the military academy were not to be trifled with. Even if he was not a student now, he would not go against the pickets, especially the picket from the National Science and Technology University of Science and Technology. It was said that he was so upright that he even criticized a leader for not strictly wearing his military uniform. Big brother Li Jinyan had abandoned him once again. This time, the people he abandoned included his own sister. Xia Jinyuan pulled Yi Qian along the familiar path as he ran. There were many surveillance cameras in the military academy, especially now that there were surveillance cameras everywhere. He had not been to the University of Science and Technology of China for a long time, so he was not sure where the cameras were and where they were not. Therefore, Xia Jinyuan stopped running when he reached a dark spot. He held Yi Qian's hand tightly and led Yi Qian back to where they came from. It was the exact opposite. His identity and Yi Qian's identity were enough to eliminate the picket guards' suspicion toward the two of them. The picket guards who were chasing after them had already seen the two figures walking towards them. One of them was tall and the other was short. They looked a little like the two people who ran away just now, but at the same time they didn't look like them. It had always been difficult for the picket guards to catch students who broke the rules in the middle of the night. Seeing the two people walking towards them, the running picket slowed down and stood in front of them. He said sternly, "Hello, comrades, please show your identification." The picket guards had the right to check their identification. If they caught students who broke the rules of military discipline, they would be criticized at the weekly meeting. Chapter 42-20. Yi Qian and Xia Jinyuan took out their IDs at the same time. 3 minutes later, the two of them continued to walk forward and stood where the three of them had been standing. Yi Qian didn't feel like crying anymore. She wanted to laugh when she saw how skillfully the man beside her dealt with the police. "I wasn't as honest as you in the past. It's harder for the police to catch me than to reach the heavens. Even if they catch me, I won't let them find anything wrong with me." Xia Jinyuan raised his eyebrows and said proudly, "First of all, you can't panic when you see the police. If you panic, you'll be in trouble. Learn from them. You still have a year to go. You're the number one headache for the teachers, team leaders, and leaders during your time in school. That's why the police often catch you. I'm different. The police will smile when they see me and won't come over to check my ID." Yi Qian smiled and looked at the handsome and gentle man in the light. "It was because of you that the police checked my ID. Yes. You're right. If you hadn't shouted, the police wouldn't have come over." Xia Jinyuan affectionately scratched Yi Qian's nose with his finger and sighed. "You're so brave. No matter how much of a headache I caused, I wouldn't have dared to shout at the top of my lungs in the middle of the night." Yi Qian blushed and said softly, "I forgot. That's why I said you're brave. By the way, who's Nian Nian? What's her relationship with Big Brother? It was the first time he heard her mention an unfamiliar name. She's a policewoman. A misunderstanding led to my brother bringing her back to Dangue Garden to verify her identity. Grandpa even mistook her for my brother's girlfriend. Yi Qian picked out the key points. Xia Jinyuan thought for a while and said slowly, Big Brother nodded just now. It seems like Big Brother has a deep impression of Nian Nian. Grandpa is good at reading people. If he said that Nian Nian is suitable for Big Brother, then it must be very suitable. Since Big Brother has a deep impression of Nian Nian, we can try to get along. I want to too, but I can't do it now. She's not in the country right now. She won't be back until next year. Yi Qian sighed softly. Thinking of the lonely figure walking in the dim light just now, Yi Qian's eyes dimmed slightly. After Aunt left, Big Brother's life in the Li family was very bad. Grandfather said that old Madame Shaoli even planned to kidnap Big Brother. If not for Big Brother's vigilance, he would have been kidnapped and killed. Although Big Brother has the identity of a member of the Li family, Old Man Li did not accept Big Brother, which made Big Brother's life difficult when he was young. Captain Xia, Big Brother wants me to be happy for the rest of my life. I also want Big Brother to be happy for the rest of his life. When the time comes, do you think I should combine the two of them and let them try it out? I have Nian Nian's number. We can give it a try. The bachelors in our army have no other way to get in touch with girls other than being introduced by friends and family. Yi Qian pursed his lips and smiled. Let the country assign you a girlfriend. National distribution? You can even think of something like that. I'm sure there must be many girls waiting for the country to assign you to them. Yi Qian's smile reached his eyes. His eyes were bright and shining like stars. National distribution of boyfriends, girlfriends. Xia Jinyuan could not stop laughing. Then I'll go back to the army and talk to the bachelors. I'll tell them not to worry. The country will assign them girlfriends. It's just a matter of time. Yi Qian was also laughing to himself. Luckily, she did not need the country to assign her a boyfriend. She already had one. Chapter 42-21. Perhaps it was the first time Xia Jinyuan heard that boyfriends and girlfriends had to be assigned by the country. He found it funny as he accompanied Yi Qian to the library. He was handsome and elegant to begin with. When he wasn't smiling, he looked cold and dignified. Now that he was in a good mood, he had a deep smile in his eyes, making him look even more handsome and elegant. He exuded the elegance of a rich young master. No matter how bad Yi Jian's colors were, she was still dazzled by his good colors several times along the way. Even her heart thumped a few times. Her man was good at both literature and martial arts. He was also quite good-looking. He treated her very well in every aspect. It was rare for him to be so affectionate. As she thought about it, Yi Qian couldn't help but laugh. No matter what, she felt like she had profited. Although Xia Jinyuan was laughing, he had already thought about Yi Qian's words several times in his heart. Assigned girlfriends by the country. This method wasn't impossible. In fact, it was very feasible. He planned to go back and have a good discussion with the Major General. He wanted to see if he could let his comrades in the country, who might actually be single, have a chance to settle down. For example, blind date. There was no need to worry about people like Han Zheng, Bai He, and K7. They all came from rich families. Even if they retired from the military, they wouldn't have to worry about finding a girlfriend. It mainly depended on whether they liked it or not. Then, for people like V8 and young Sparrowhawk, who came from poor families, if they didn't find a girlfriend in time, their marriage would indeed become a big problem. As the captain, he couldn't just watch his comrades not have a partner when they grew old. Couples in their youth would accompany each other when they grew old, just like old master and old madam at home. They were deeply in love when they were young, but when they grew old, they would support each other and hold each other's hands. They would have endless words to talk to each other, diluting the loneliness of not having children or grandchildren by their side. It's settled then. He would first ask his comrades for their opinions. If they thought it was feasible and could accept the arranged blind dates, then he would let the country assign them. After making up his mind, Xia Jinyuan felt that his girlfriend had solved a problem for him. He rubbed Yi Qian's head and said with a smile, "You've solved a big problem for me. I plan to discuss it with my comrades when I go back and see if they're willing to accept all the girlfriends assigned by the country. If they're willing, I plan to apply to Major General Yang and arrange blind dates for my comrades." Hearing this, Yi Qian widened his eyes and said in surprise, "I was just saying. You actually took it seriously. A girlfriend assigned by the country." She was really just saying it casually. Why did Captain Xia take it seriously? Yes, it's true. It's a feasible plan. There are many bachelors in our team. I've been in the team for a few years now. So far, only 2 couples have gotten married. One is G3 and the other is Pigeons. There are only so few veterans, and more than half of them are bachelors. As the captain, I'm also quite worried about their marriage. I have to think of a way to solve it. Unlike in the future, the military now did not open up the military from time to allow ordinary people to understand the life in the military. It was all under closed management, and unrelated people were not allowed to come close. The security was so tight that ordinary people had no idea what it was like inside the military. Soldiers were also not allowed to go out at will. As a result, if they wanted to find a girlfriend, they had to rely on their families to introduce them. Especially for special forces soldiers like Xia Jinyuan, who had a high-risk occupation, they didn't even have a holiday at the end of the year. Even if their families wanted to introduce them, they couldn't. They could only rely on the military to find a solution. Chapter 42-22. Xia Jinyuan talked about the current situation in the Snowfield Brigade, and Yi Qian could empathize with him. When he mentioned that his comrades would sometimes reject the pursuit of girls because of their careers, Yi Qian felt very sad. Compared to their comrades giving up, she and Captain Xia were much more fortunate. Big Brother's marriage has to be settled as soon as possible. He's 1 year older than me, and it's time for him to get married and have children. As he spoke, Xia Jinyuan brought the topic back to his brother-in-law. Once his brother-in-law's marriage was settled, he probably wouldn't keep such a close eye on him and Little Fox. With a brother-in-law who was so protective of his sister, Yi Qian felt a lot of pressure as his brother-in-law. Yi Qian nodded in agreement and said softly, "Grandpa said the same thing. Big Brother is almost 30 years old and has been alone for so many years. It's time for him to have someone by his side. Last time, Grandpa mentioned it to Dad, and Dad said that the female soldiers in the Navy are rare treasures. Even the clerks at sea are male soldiers, so it'll be difficult for Big Brother to find a girlfriend at sea. Now that you mention it, I have to urge my brother to find me a sister-in-law as soon as possible. The only sister-in-law I can think of right now is Nian Nian." There was a hint of heaviness in Qin Qian's voice. Her brother was actually the same as her. No one loved them since they were young, and they had to rely on themselves to survive. Big Brother relied on himself in his previous life, just like in this life, and became a pillar of the country. As for herself, fortunately, she didn't live her life in vain. She finally lived a decent life. She had already found Captain Xia, and she hoped that her brother would soon find a girl who could make him not feel lonely anymore. She wanted a girl who could make him worry about her every time he came back. She wanted her brother to take care of her carefully. Xia Jinyuan believed that it was not that his brother-in-law could not find a girlfriend. Even if he did not have a family background, he could find a girlfriend by himself. If he did not believe it, he could definitely win the hearts of countless girls just by walking on the street. The main thing was whether his brother-in-law was willing or not. The two of them chatted as they arrived at the library. Like a normal couple, they had endless things to talk about. One topic at this moment, another topic at that moment. There was not much time left for them to chat like this. Xia Jinyuan had to return to the military headquarters tomorrow afternoon, and then immediately return to the unit. He had been away for more than a year. As the captain of the Snowfield Brigade, he did not even have a month of rest. After a few days of poor rest, he would be busy all the time. Both of them knew that tomorrow would be the day they would be parting. Neither of them mentioned it, and they spoke gently and softly along the way. The melancholy of parting did not shroud their brows, nor did it affect their mood at this moment. They accepted it calmly because they were used to it. Li Jinyan, who had silently walked away, walked to the large sports field. The sports field had already quieted down. Without the intense training during the day, Li Jinyan walked slowly along the sports field. His expression was indifferent, and no one could tell what he was thinking at this moment. Perhaps he was not thinking about anything, or perhaps he was thinking about all sorts of problems. He had always been this lonely. He was used to being alone and indifferent. Even if he was walking alone without anyone by his side, he would not feel anything. But tonight Li Jinyan felt a little lonely for the first time. He had personally handed his younger sister over to another man, watched the other man carefully care for her, and watched the couple standing in front of him. Even if there were tears, they could not break the affection. At that moment, he felt gratified and envious at the same time. Chapter 42-23. Sixth brother, who had family Xia, was lucky enough to find his younger sister. From then on, he had his younger sister by his side. From then on, he had the deepest concern in his heart. He had the love of his life. In the future, they could hold hands, fight together, and hold hands together. He suddenly felt a little envious of this kind of love. He was so envious that he even felt a little moved. He wondered if he should also find a girl who could hold hands with him. A girl who could hold hands with him until he grew old, a girl who would only love him for the rest of his life. In that instant, he walked from the training center to the field. He walked for almost 15 minutes, but he still couldn't suppress his feelings. Not only did he not suppress them, but he also felt more and more lonely in the starry night sky. Lonely, Li Jinyan stopped in his tracks and pursed his thin, cold lip. Why did he suddenly feel so lonely? He had been living like this for so many years. How could he feel lonely? How could he be so envious of his younger sister's love that he wanted to find a girl to hold hands with? A girl to hold hands with was not something he could hold hands with just because he wanted to. Forget it. With a career like his, he shouldn't waste a girl's youth. He didn't go home for many years. Everything he did was for the army. He ate, dressed, lived, and traveled in the army. He rarely came back even once a year. After thinking about it, Li Jinyan felt that it was better not to find a girlfriend. Not everyone was as lucky as sixth brother, who had a family Xia, to be able to find a girlfriend like his younger sister. He took out his phone and put it back into his trouser pocket. The blue screen flashed, and a group of phone numbers could be vaguely seen on the screen. Zhou Nian. That was the phone number that Nian had left for Li Jinyan. A girl who had indeed left a deep impression on him. He didn't have any feelings for her. He only felt that she was very interesting. When she made his grandfather laugh, every time he looked at her, he felt like he was looking at an animal, a little monkey. Just like a lively and interesting monkey, she easily made his grandfather laugh. Her personality was completely different from his younger sister's. She looked carefree, but was actually very attentive. She was also very humorous and elegant. His grandfather liked her very much. A little fox and a little monkey. It was as if the two little animals in the capital had met each other and were able to capture criminals side by side. It was indeed fate. For so many years, she was the only girl he had interacted with. That was why he had such a deep impression of her. That was why his heart was moved in that instant. Should he also find a girlfriend? That was why he thought of her. I need to calm down, Li Jinyan said in a low voice. As if he had made a decision, he took out his phone from his pocket and lit up the screen. Finally, he deleted Anniversary's phone number. It was better to be single. If he was lonely, then so be it. He was already living in fear, so why harm an innocent girl? He just suddenly wanted to find a girl to hold hands with. Other than his sister, she was the only girl he had on his phone. His first impression of her was not bad, so there was no need to think too much about it. After deleting Anniversary's phone call, Li Jinyan no longer strolled along the field alone. He had come alone and left the field alone. The night swallowed his figure. The field was very quiet and the stars were very bright. There was no trace of his feelings. The next afternoon, after Yi Qian sent off Xia Jinyuan, he didn't have time to feel sad. Li Jinyan, who was supposed to stay for 2 more days, also left in a hurry. He didn't even have time to say goodbye to Yi Qian and left in a hurry. By the time Yi Qian found out, it was already nighttime. Chapter 42-24. He was only half an hour late from the actual combat simulation practice room. Big Brother, who was supposed to leave in 2 days, had actually left. He was in such a rush that he did not even have time to say goodbye. Could it be that there was an emergency in the army and he was called back? That must be it. Other than an emergency in the army, there was nothing else that could make Big Brother leave in such a hurry. Because he did not see Li Jinyan off, and Xia Jinyuan had also left today, Yi Qian, who was usually casual, was not in a good mood at this moment. Captain Xia should have already reached the military by now. It was already 10 o'clock at night, so he should have already returned to the army. Time passed quickly. Similarly, Captain Xia, who was chasing after time, was also exceptionally busy. It had only been a few hours since they parted. Yi Qian, who had not yet adapted, lay on his bed with his eyes open until past 12 o'clock before falling asleep. She was the only one in the dormitory. He Jing and Su Wen had followed the instructors to a meeting at the provincial military base. She was not with them because she was responsible for the actual combat simulation exercise. The actual combat simulation was a computer simulation exercise using sand tables, computers, and map. This was the first time that the University of Science and Technology of China and Luji had completed an actual combat simulation on the Internet. It was also the first time that the military academies had started a simulation on the computer, so the 2 schools attached great importance to it. This was a monumental process. Starting a simulation like this could first promote communication between the military academies and students. The confrontation between the 2 armies would start in the 4 cities in the south. Lu Ji would initiate the invasion of the cities, while the University of Science and Technology of China students would defend until Lu Ji was repelled. The competition had only started in a meeting today, and the actual competition on the computer would only start tomorrow. Yi Qian, who had sent his lover and family away, only had a short night of discomfort before throwing himself into the intense simulation the next day. Li Jinyan took a 3-hour flight and then a helicopter to arrive at the base of the Tri-Habitat Storm Frogman assault team. He alighted from the military helicopter and strode towards the combat command building. The Great Mermaid who came to pick him up reported the latest situation while walking quickly. One member of the Liabi peacekeeping force has been sacrificed. An electromagnetic specialist, 3 students, and an interpreter sent by our country are still missing. The location of the missing persons is the Garovi coast. It was inconvenient for Big Shark to speak on the phone. Now that she was in the base, she seized the time to report all the information they had received to Demon King. Li Jinyan of the Storm Commandos, codenamed Demon King, already knew the ins and outs of the whole matter before he even reached the battle command building. The electromagnetism expert and the 3 students were all from the University of Science and Technology of China. The translator was an Australian international student who had just joined the army last winter. His ability was outstanding, and he also had some skills as the accompanying translator. 2 days ago, they had gone missing after landing on a boat. Both the people and the boat had disappeared. The Chinese peacekeeping force that had entered Libya immediately sent reinforcements to investigate. In the end, one of the peacekeepers was sacrificed. The Chinese soldiers who went to the peacekeeping force all had light weapons in their hands, and they mainly focused on medical and engineering construction. In addition, the 14 years of civil war had destroyed the entire country's security system. The Chinese peacekeepers were very dangerous, and the deployment of personnel was not very sufficient. After 2 days without any results and one of the peacekeepers had been sacrificed, the Chinese military immediately stopped the search for the peacekeepers and arranged for the Chinese special forces to go as quickly as possible. The location of the disappearance was the coast. After much consideration, the military decided to send a tri-habitat team that had not been formed for 5 years to the Garovi coast. Chapter 42-25. This was the first time the Storm Commandos had to go overseas for a mission, and it was in a country that had been in a civil war for 14 years. Danger lurked everywhere. As the captain, Li Jinyan said to the 12 participating water ghosts with a cold expression, "Do you want to achieve something?" "Yes." The 12 participating members answered Li Jinyan in a loud voice and high morale. "Me too." There was an undercurrent in Li Jinyan's cold gaze, like the undercurrent in the depths of the calm sea. Although it was turbulent, it was not easily discovered. "I wanted to, but I hope that you will always remember that you only have one life. We have to find the people. We have to bring back the lives. Their lives, our lives, and everyone's lives, we have to bring them back. Do you hear me?" Li Jinyan, who had always been as calm as ice, said the last, "Do you hear me?" in a flat tone. He did not even raise his voice much. However, there was an unstoppable sharpness in it. It was cold, like an arrow that had shot straight into everyone's hearts, leaving a deep impression on all the water ghosts. Li Jinyan had to bring the people back. He also had to bring back the lives of his comrade. It had not been easy for the Storm Commandos to get to where they were today. Every water ghost was a drop of the country's blood, sweat, and tears. Nothing could happen to the experts and students. Nothing could happen to the interpreters. Similarly, nothing could happen to the comrades who were with him day and night. He had brought them out in one piece, so he had to bring them back to the country in one piece. Li Jinyan arrived at the Combat Command Building for less than 2 hours. At 2:17 a.m., the team and the 12 water ghosts boarded the plane to the coast of Labigarovi. This time, it was not a transfer flight, but a direct flight. He left the country overnight. Yi Qian, who was in the University of Science and Technology of China, was sleeping. When Li Jinyan arrived at the coast of Labigarovi, Yi Qian was fighting with the students of Luji. The first simulated battle was to reclaim the mountain. The AC point was the first line of defense of the invading party, Shaluzi. There were continuous trenches, many bunkers, machine gun bunkers, and iron wire barricade. Between the first line of defense and the second line of defense, there were also independent machine gun points and fortified stronghold. It was obvious that the invaders had strengthened the defenses of the first and second lines of defense. As the recipient of the medicine, if Yi Qian wanted to lead his troops to take down the mountain, they would have to take down the first and second lines of defense and destroy the enemy's bunkers and machine gun bunkers in one fell swoop. If this is a normal battle, we can just send out the artillery. Our field of vision is good, which provides our artillery with favorable conditions to attack. On the screen, Yi Qian's figure appeared before the eyes of Lu Ji, the leaders of the University of Science and Technology of China, the military leaders, and the instructors of the two universities. The young female student calmly analyzed the layout of the battlefield and controlled the situation. In between the lines of defense, The invaders have deployed a large number of machine guns to block our attack. With such a large defensive position, without the support of artillery, we will have to pay a heavy price. Therefore, I will send 3 battalions and an artillery team to enter from here." The laser pointer pointed at the three-dimensional love of the mountain that appeared on the screen. She pointed at a mountain pass. "This is the weakest point of the invaders. I will attack from the rear flank and coordinate with the front flank. We will attack from both sides and eliminate the second line of defense first." The female student's voice was very clear. Even though she only appeared on the screen and was not standing in front of them, the leaders who were sitting and watching the simulation could feel a murderous aura that came from the battlefield. Chapter 42-26. By the time she finished explaining the deployment, the leaders of the University of Science and Technology of China were already smiling. The University of Science and Technology of China was very confident that they would win this battle. Lu Ji's leader's expression was a little serious. The battle commander sent by the National Science and Technology of China looked young but was very experienced in battle. After Shi Luji finished the deployment, the National Science and Technology Conference had 15 minutes to consider before accepting the battle. This way, Shi Luhui's side actually had an extra 15 minutes to adjust the battle. The result: in less than 3 minutes after Lu Ji finished the deployment, the National Science and Technology Conference immediately accepted the battle and began the corresponding battle deployment. This imperceptibly made Shi Luji's students feel pressured. Even if they discovered the problem now and the National Science and Technology Conference had already deployed the battle, they could not change it. Just like now, if the National Science and Technology Conference did not immediately start the battle deployment with Lu Ji's ability, he would definitely find the weak spot within 15 minutes and adjust it accordingly. Unfortunately, it was already too late. From the moment the National Science and Technology Conference accepted the battle, they did not give Lu Ji another chance to look at the entire battle deployment. They found the weak spot and started the simulation battle. Lu Ji's leader's expression was very serious. This time, the National Science and Technology Conference had a high chance of winning. After Yi Qian finished the deployment, the simulation battle immediately started. She was no longer on the screen, only smoke and the sound of cannonballs and bullet. Yi Qian, who disappeared from the screen, stood beside the sand table. She and the other 2 staff officers began the next step of the attack. "After taking down the first and second lines of defense, we have to occupy this place." She picked up a small plastic red flag with the number 511 written on it and placed it on a small hill. "Occupy the position on Highland 511 and then place the cannon team here to kill the invaders in all aspects. Force them back here." A small red flag with the number 513 written on it was placed on a small hill. At that time, the entire sand table layout would become the cannon team on Highland 511 against the invaders on Highland 513. This battle would be considered as a victory. Even though the entire battle situation was a simulation, the sound of cannonballs and bullets was so real that it was as if they were in a real battle. It made the leaders who were watching the entire battle look solemn. It was as if they were watching it live. Pa, the sound of the computer keyboard was heard. The entire simulation battle entered a white-hot stage. Lu Ji's students had cold sweat trickling down their foreheads, especially the student who was in charge of the battle. His brows were tightly furrowed as he stared at the entire battle. He stood motionless in front of the screen, observing the entire battle. The first simulated battle ended, and the reclaiming side won. They occupied Highland 511 and forced the invaders to retreat to Highland 513. Then, they launched a reaping battle, and the invaders lost. A student beside him saw that the battle had been decided. He said to the student in charge of the battle, "The enemy's commander is Yi Qian. I've participated in the tournament with her before and have seen her abilities. She was very powerful and meticulous. In the end, she blocked the provocations of the students from Korea and Japan. She even ruthlessly stepped on the faces of the students from the two countries. At that time, we only had admiration for her. This was one of the students who had participated with Yi Qian and the other 16 students in the International Military Academy tournament organized by Monfei. After witnessing Yi Qian's prowess, he had warned their battle commanders not to be too careless. If they were careless, they would lose everything. During the simulation battle between Yi Qian and the students from the National University of Science and Technology, Shuku Village was not very peaceful. Two strangers entered the village and asked if there was a middle-aged woman named Hong Mei in the village. Chapter 42-27. Shuku Village was remote and didn't have many tourist resources. After entering the 21st century, the young people in the village started to go out to work. Soon after, the elders also left the mountains to work in the big cities to earn money. Nowadays, life in the village was getting better day by day. The villagers' knowledge was also increasing day by day. Even their vigilance had changed drastically. In particular, Shuku Village was a village close to a military base. Every year, the villagers would have countless information security conferences. In terms of vigilance, the villagers in Shuku Village were even more vigilant than the residents in town. Looking at the two strangers who suddenly came to the village to ask about people, Uncle Hai, who was being questioned, stared at the two strangers with vigilance and directly replied, "I don't know." Hongmei, there were many names in the village. Hongmei, Xuemei, Chumei. There were many of them. The older generation liked to give names that sounded good, but they didn't know many words. They would give names that sounded good. There were many names like Mei, Hongmei, Wen, and Li. Moreover, they knew that it wasn't a good thing for strangers to come into the village to ask about people. They had to be vigilant at all times and couldn't speak carelessly. Carelessly speaking would harm people. If they weren't careful, they would become traitors. Most of the villagers who stayed behind were old. They had worked in the fields for their entire lives. They didn't like outsiders, and they didn't like strangers intruding into their lives. Without waiting for the strangers to finish, Uncle Hai said stiffly, "Hurry up and leave. There's no one in our village called Hongmei. Go to the neighboring village and ask. Big brother, we're here to look for our former comrades. Think about it again. Is there a woman who's our age in the village who used to be a soldier? I'm 43 today. This is my wife." The stranger who asked the question was well dressed. He was wearing a suit and black leather shoes. He even had a briefcase in his hand. He looked like an intellectual. His wife, on the other hand, was wearing a dark red velvet jumpsuit and a thin, milky white sweater. She had a gentle temperament, just like a teacher. Uncle Hai didn't care. Without even thinking, he picked up the hoe and walked out of the paddy field. He casually plucked the two leeches that were sucking on his calf and used the hoe in his hand to cut them in half. Blood flowed from the edge of the field into the green grass. The two halves of the leeches were still twisting and struggling. The middle-aged woman was frightened and took a step back. Her eyes revealed a look of disgust. When Uncle Hai saw this, he snorted and picked up the hoe again. He walked barefooted through the mud and stopped talking to the two of them. What comrade in arms? Did he think that they had never seen a comrade in arms before? A few days ago, a group of soldiers on a long training course ran past their village. The villagers' unwillingness to cooperate made the two people, who had finally found them, a little anxious. The old man had instructed the husband and wife to find out Hong Mei's residence and personal information. They could not return empty-handed. Since this person couldn't do it, he would just have to find someone else. Find a woman and give her some money. The middle-aged woman came up with an idea. Money could make the devil turn millstones. She did not believe that there were no peasant women in such a remote and desolate place. There were definitely people who were greedy for money. However, they had been alerted by the various security conferences in the army, especially when they saw that some news had been leaked. Even if it was just a small piece of news, as long as it was related to the army, there was no difference between big and small. If they were not careful, they would be sentenced or something. Even if they were greedy for money, they knew that it would be useless if they did not have the life to spend it. Chapter 42:28. Auntie Chiu took the 100 yuan and pointed out a bunch of red plum blossoms. She even mentioned the red plum blossoms in the neighboring village and spoke a bunch of local Mandarin. She even brought the two of them to the 2 red plum blossoms in Shuku village. When she sent the 2 strangers away, Auntie Chiu even smiled and said, "Come often when you're free." After spending almost half a day in the village, they didn't find anything. Instead, they paid 100 yuan and didn't even drink tea. The 2 of them didn't look as good as when they first arrived. They had spent money and they did see the red plum blossoms, but it wasn't the red plum they were looking for. The middle-aged woman didn't have any hope. "We've already gone to 3 villages. If we still can't find anything, we'll have to go back to the capital." The old man has high hope. "If we can't find anything, we won't be able to report back to the old man." The middle-aged man held the blurry photo in his hand. It was a black and white group photo from the 60s. It was taken in 1979, and it had been 24 or 5 years. The photo itself was blurry and the faces were blurred. Even if the people in the photo appeared, they wouldn't be able to recognize who was who. After leaving Shuku village, the 2 of them continued to ask around in the surrounding villages. Auntie Chiu, who took the money but didn't do anything, ran to Zhang Difu's house, who was still sitting in the village chief's seat. She quickly told the village chief, who had just returned home from farming, that strangers had entered the village and asked about a female soldier named Red Plum. "There aren't many female soldiers in the village. Yi Girl is one, and Yi Girl's mother is another. But the names don't match. I thought it would be a waste not to take the 100 yuan, so I took the 2 of them to the first 2 households in the village and let them see red plum blossoms." Village Chief Zhang Difu's expression changed when he heard that Auntie Chiu took 100 yuan from someone else. But in any case, Auntie Chiu had pointed out the main point, so he didn't flare up. Although Auntie Chiu had never left the village, she was a shrewd person who knew which words to say first and which to say later. Otherwise, how could she have made Sun Dongqing stomp her feet in anger back then? She had a sharp tongue. "There's a problem if anyone dares to say anything about Yi Girl and her mother. I won't say anything about you taking advantage of her. You're just a woman. But if you mess things up, I won't recognize anyone from the same village." Treason was such a big crime that the entire village would not be able to raise their heads for generations. Wherever they went, they would be pointed at and gossiped about. "I need to call the army and let the higher-ups know that someone has entered the village again." With the army's propaganda work in place, the villagers of Shuku village, which was closest to the army, knew that something was wrong and immediately informed the army. Needless to say, with the cooperation of the villagers, they caught several groups of people who wanted to enter the mountains to take military photos. Commander-in-Chief Xia already knew about this even before the 2 strangers who inquired about Hong Mei left Fujian town. All information about Martyr Hong Mei had already been erased, and the village where she lived only knew Sun Xueqing, not Hong Mei. Even if they went to Martyr Hong Mei's maternal home with a group photo, no one knew that Hong Mei was Sun Xueqing. As for Martyr's Park, the photo had already been taken down. The name engraved on the tombstone was Martyr Hong Mei's grave. Even if they went to Martyr's Park, they wouldn't find anything. Although everything had been arranged, they still couldn't let their guard down. Since they had already investigated Shuku village, it was hard to guarantee that they would find more information. Chapter 42:29. For example, getting new information from Martyr Hong Mei's former comrades. All of these were possible. The military was trying their best to find Hong Mei's former comrades, especially the person who had passed on false information to Bureau Chief Kai and the others who had wanted to help Hong Mei. Back then, after this person had passed on the news of Yi Qian's drowning to Bureau Chief Kai and the others, he had lost contact with all his comrades. His whereabouts were still unknown. The military could not find this person through the household register, so they suspected that this person had changed his name and started a new life with a new identity. Either he was still in the country or he had gone overseas. The country was so big, the world so big. Even if the military was as powerful as it would still be difficult to find someone who had appeared in public more than a decade ago. The two were no longer watched closely by the villagers, but by the scouts stationed deep in the mountains of Shuku village. They watched for 3 days straight, and only after seeing the two leave Fujian town empty-handed did the scouts return to their units. At this time, Yi Qian had finished 2 days of simulated combat with Lu Ji. She was the overall commander, so after the outcome was decided, she immediately started writing a report. Not only did she have to write a detailed analysis of the entire battle, she also had to point out where the simulation system was lacking, what advantages it had, and where it needed to be improved. Busy but fulfilling, this was Yi Qian's life at the military academy. The dormitory and classroom lights were turned off on time for bed. Yi Qian, who needed to write a report, went to the library with a few staff officers to write it out as soon as possible. They could not drag it out. Every day they delayed meant another day of work. Lu Ji's vanguard encountered the reconnaissance team we sent out. If we want to take control of the battle, we have to see who reacts first and fires first. My reconnaissance team has been keeping their weapons on standby all this time, while the vanguard troops of the Lu army are in an advanced state and have not entered a standby state. The sovereignty of the encounter lies in who opens fire first and instantly attacks and suppresses the enemy in the most ferocious form. Whoever is likely to be the winner. And we won, while Lu Ji's vanguard lost. But we still made a big mistake. The vanguard was the vanguard, and the support team did not lock onto their position in time. So, we lost the second half. In a corner of the library, Yi Qian printed out the topographic map he had drawn. The pencil slid slowly along the curved lines, first pointing out all the shortcomings of their side for the past 2 days. The 3 staff officers nodded from time to time as they listened and took note. Another clerk recorded the discussion into text on the computer. A report was not something that could be written on a whim, especially a combat report. They had to first analyze the entire battle situation before they could publish the report. By the time Yi Qian and the others finished their analysis and looked up at the time, it was already past 1 in the morning. The library was rather quiet at 1 o'clock in the morning. There were 2 lights in the corner, but the surroundings were pitch black. It was so quiet that even if someone yawned, it would sound very loud. The sound of hurried footsteps was so loud that it was several decibels louder than during the day. Yi Qian and the others, who were tidying up, looked up at the library entrance. It was very dark there, so dark that one could only see rows of shelves with books. When the door opened, Yi Qian also stood up. He smiled at the students who were visibly holding their breaths and said, "It's a student from my dorm. You guys continue to tidy up. I'll go take a look." It was He Jing. She had just returned to school this afternoon. Chapter 4230. He Jing and Su Wen had followed the instructors to attend a meeting at the provincial military base, so they did not participate in the actual combat simulation mission. It was already past 1 in the morning, yet they had rushed to the library. It was obvious that something urgent had happened. In a corner of the library, a few students joked, "They've been classmates for 3 years. Yi Qian can tell who is who just by listening to their footstep. Do you guys think she can tell who is who from the footsteps of the entire class?" This was a joke. It was past 1 in the morning, the time when people were the most sleepy. They needed to relax a little and get their spirits up. Yi Qian is extraordinary. She might really be able to tell who is who. Hey, did you guys hear? A few days ago, a senior brother from our class came back. I heard that he was a famous figure in our military academy, just like Yi Jian. I heard from a freshman that Yi Jian fought with a senior brother who was also a famous figure. Surprisingly, Yi Jian didn't lose. He even forced that senior brother to the point where he couldn't fight back. When this student started a topic, the other two immediately became interested and nodded repeatedly. I heard. It's been spreading in our class these past few days. I also heard from them that Yi Jian's fighting skills were not taught by the instructor. All of them are the kind that can be fatal once they enter the arena. Yes, I heard about that too. The instructor said that Yi Qian's close combat skills were mega and mixed combat skills. If they really fought, even the instructor might not be a match for Yi Qian. After this student finished speaking, the other two students instantly fell silent. After a while, the student who started the topic put his hands on the table and whispered, "Do you guys still remember when Yi Qian came to report at the start of the semester? At that time, our military training was about to end. Yi Qian just came over. In the end, she stood in a military stance, did a forward kick, and passed all the standard military training. They were all third-year students. Even though it had been 3 years, their memories of the freshman year were still fresh in their mind. Thinking back, it felt like it had just happened yesterday. How could I not remember? I only got to know Yi Qian because of that lunge. At that time, I was wondering why he looked so much more militaristic than our fourth-year senior who trained us. I was a few classes away from you, so I didn't see Yi Qian's performance when he came in. I only saw Yi Qian during the flag-raising ceremony. At that time, I thought the instructor was the flag-bearer. His military posture was as straight as a spear, and he looked very imposing. The clerk who was organizing the information did not join in. Although he heard what the students were discussing, he also wanted to say that the thing that left the deepest impression on him was when Yi Qian was shooting. His posture with the gun was even more accurate than the demonstration in the textbook. Unfortunately, he did not have the time to join in on this common topic. He had to enter all the information into the computer. Tomorrow, Yi Qian would have to hand it over to the leader. Yi Qian had already seen He Jing. She did not turn on the lights and walked over directly. She even gave He Jing, who had hurriedly pushed the door open, a fright. He Jing calmed herself down. Panting, she whispered, "Quick, the department leader is looking for you. He said that there is something very urgent and he wants you to go over. Put down all the work at hand and don't waste any time." The department leader personally went to the dormitory to look for Yi Qian, but he did not find her. Therefore, she, Su-won, and the department leader split up to look for Yi Qian. There were many places in the school for students to study at night. Sometimes, even the training hall would be open. Yi Qian usually went to 3 places at night: the field, the library, and the training hall. Chapter 42-31. Hearing this, Yi Qian's eyes darkened. She nodded and said, "Okay, I'll go over and let them know. It'll be quick." Their report was almost done. She had already pointed out the important points. All they needed to do was polish it a little more, remove the repetitive and unnecessary parts, and then it would be about done. She had to let the students, who had been working late into the night with her, know. When Yi Qian said that she had an urgent matter to attend to, the students immediately nodded and expressed that they would do a good job. Yi Qian gave them a few more instructions and highlighted 3 key points for discussion. Then she left with He Jing in a hurry. Why are they in such a hurry? Did something happen? Did something happen in their class? Something must have happened. If Yi Qian still has to rush over at this time, I'm afraid it's a little big. Let's not talk about Yi Qian for now. Even if something happens, we won't know. Come, let's hurry up and go through the information in our hands again. Let's discuss the key points that Yi Qian highlighted and see if there's anything to add. Okay, let's hurry up. Let's see if we can finish by 3 in the morning. Fortunately, Yi Qian has finished analyzing all the key points. The progress is very fast and we didn't waste any time. Otherwise, once she leaves, this report will definitely have a lot of flaws. The lights in the corner of the library were on. The 4 students were bent over their desks and immersed themselves in their work. Yi Qian almost ran all the way to the department leader's office. When the department leader, who had already returned to the office, heard a reporting from the door, he immediately said, "Come in quickly." When Yi Qian pushed the door open and entered, he saw the department leader holding the phone. With a solemn expression, he said, "Yi Qian is already here. I'll pass the phone to her now." It wasn't the department leader who was looking for Yi Qian. It was the military who was looking for Yi Qian. At 1:30 in the morning, Yi Qian didn't pack any luggage. He rushed into a car in camouflage pants and a short-sleeved shirt and headed to Lady Military Airport. The entire journey took 3 hours on the highway, and it took another hour or so to get to the Lady Military Airport. Yi Qian boarded a military plane at 6 in the morning and flew directly to the capital. In the capital, a flight to Libya was supposed to take off at 7:45 in the morning, but due to special reasons, it was delayed for an entire hour and took off at 8:45 in the morning. The plane did not take off on time. The airport had already made preparations, so it did not affect the departure of the subsequent flights. At 8:40, Yi Qian boarded the plane to Libya. She was alone. She only had a phone and the $500 that the military had given her when she boarded the plane. A cell phone, $500, and a student ID were all Yi Qian's luggage. He was also the only passenger who boarded the plane empty-handed. She sat in the first-class cabin. The flight crew knew that the flight was delayed because they were waiting for this girl in camouflage to board. After breakfast was served, the flight attendant carefully said, "Let us know if there's anything." Then, she left quietly. Yi Qian needed sleep. After breakfast, she asked for a thin blanket and an eye mask. She needed to get enough sleep during the 10-hour flight to Libya. This was because she entered combat mode immediately after she got off the plane. There was no buffer time at all. The translator, Yang Heng, went missing. Several professors from the National University of Science and Technology went missing. There was also an expert who went missing. They went missing when they were out at sea. The last thing the radar showed was a small island. Big Brother led the storm commandos to the island. They found the missing ship, but they didn't find the missing people. Chapter 42-32. The last time Yang Heng came to the University of Science and Technology of China, he left after a few days. Yi Qian did not send him off when he left. Who knew that the next time he heard about him, he would be missing? The last time Yang Heng came to school, he did not say where he would be going. When Yi Qian chatted with Yang Heng alone, Yang Heng said that he had to practice shooting. He knew where he was going to go on a business trip, so practicing shooting would do him no harm. Yi Qian did not know if Yang Heng practiced shooting. As an accompanying translator, he should have been equipped with a light weapon for self-defense when he entered a country with civil strife. His 3 seniors were all experts in the field of electromagnetism. Although they were not experts yet, it was only a matter of time before they would become experts in electromagnetism and become the backbone of the country. Needless to say, the electromagnetism expert had already started a big project. The main direction was in the field of electromagnetism ejection technology. He was the expert in the field of electromagnetism. His 3 seniors were the disciples of this expert in electromagnetism and also the seniors' doctorate instructors. The teacher and the students went missing together. Yi Qian was worried that the students would put themselves in danger in order to protect the teacher. Yi Qian, who had his eyes closed, did not fall asleep immediately. His mind kept thinking. Although he seemed to be asleep, he was actually very awake. After thinking for about 2 hours, Yi Qian slowly relaxed his mind and fell asleep. Xia Jinyuan, who had already arrived at the base and started training all the Special Forces soldiers, did not know that his girlfriend had gone abroad for a mission. The Special Forces soldiers he recruited before he left had already become veterans who had been in the Snowfield Brigade for 2 years. As the captain, he had been away for more than a year and had not properly communicated with the veterans for 2 years. Now that he was back, he naturally had to seize the time to communicate with them. Once he discovered any problems, he would immediately rectify them. His communication was very simple. It depended on individual training and teamwork. It only took 1 day of communication for the 30 veterans to be disciplined by Xia Jinyuan to the point where they could not even raise their heads. On the second day back, Xia Jinyuan waved his hand and increased the intensity of the training. Not only did he increase the intensity of the training, but he also used a brush to write a few words that made the hearts of the 30 veterans bleed. He then used transparent tape to paste the words on the slogan erected on the training ground. A coward is not a bastard. There were only 5 words on white paper and black word. They were very big. Every time they ran a lap, 30 veterans had to pass in front of these 5 words. They were so embarrassed that their faces and ears turned red. G3's Inrong was also very helpless. They had never been able to understand the thoughts of their commander. He looked like he was smiling, but who knew that when he turned around, his face would be covered with dark clouds. Even these veterans who had been on the battlefield with him for a few years were scared to death. The captain, who was almost 30 years old, was even more frightening than the captain from a few years ago who still had a tender face. Especially when he was smiling 1 second and his face darkened the next second. That murderous aura made it seem as if he would casually reward them with a bullet. Xia Jinyuan was busy training the veterans and didn't have much time to rest in the past 2 days, let alone call his girlfriend to check on her. Even if he and Yi Qian were both in China, they wouldn't be able to speak on the phone even once a month. Yi Qian went abroad to cooperate with Li Jinyan to carry out missions, while Xia Jinyuan was in China to deal with the Special Forces soldiers who didn't meet his expectations at all. Li Jinyan was already waiting for his sister to come over. The male soldiers were a big target here. Sometimes, when they asked questions, the hostile gazes of the soldiers gave Li Jinyan a headache. Chapter 42-33. Li Jinyan and his team found the missing ship, but the process of finding it was extremely difficult. In the end, they saw that the female military doctor in the peacekeeping force could enter the village and communicate normally with the locals. Big Shark suggested to Li Jinyan that they should send a skilled female soldier over. Send a female soldier with great fighting skills to come over? Who should they send? Li Jinyan, who also realized that female soldiers could make the locals lower their guard than male soldiers, fell silent. The only female soldier he thought of was his sister, Yi Qian. Qing Niao. Qing Niao has trained with us before, and we have a good rapport with each other. It would be very suitable to send her over as the vanguard. Big Shark also thought of Qing Niao, who had trained with them. Li Jinyan only thought for less than a minute before he contacted China. Thus Yi Qian and her team were formed. Libya was a country filled with all kinds of dangers. The civil war had severely damaged the country's economy and system. Everywhere was fragmented and there were ruins everywhere. Yi Qian walked out of the airport. Even the airport could see the traces of war. There were bullet holes on the telephone poles outside, and a car billboard was shot into a sieve. It was a shocking sight. 2 peacekeepers came to pick her up. In this place, even peacekeepers couldn't walk around alone. There had to be more than 2 of them because you never knew what dangers you would face next. The two peacekeepers had only arrived in Libya last year. A year of peacekeeping had allowed them to slowly adapt to the environment of Libya. When they saw Yi Qian, the smiles on their faces were brighter than the sun. The first thing Yi Qian did when she got on the car was to grab a weapon. She didn't have any weapons when she came from China. She didn't even have time to grab her self-defense weapon, silver wire. She took the car overnight to the military airport in Leyte, and then transferred to the airport in Libya's capital. Now, she really needed a weapon to defend herself. The Type 95 rifle, the uniform rifle that our peacekeepers are equipped with. There's also a Type 95 military knife. It's not uniform, but specially equipped by the squadron leader. One bulletproof vest, one locator, one compass, one night vision goggles, one helmet. Yi Qian opened a camouflage bag at the back of the car. The peacekeeper sitting in the front passenger seat told Yi Qian what individual combat weapons he needed. The peacekeepers tried their best to equip Yi Qian with weapons for individual combat. It was also the first time they had heard of a female soldier coming to support a special forces team. However, since these people were specially sent by the country, they were definitely not simple. No matter how powerful a soldier was, if she did not have a single combat weapon, her power would be reduced by half. When Yi Qian came empty-handed, the military had already asked the peacekeepers to prepare a single combat weapon for her. Yi Qian, who was wearing a camouflage short-sleeved shirt, first put on the desert camouflage uniform for special operations. Due to the environment, desert camouflage was more suitable for hiding. Dressing and changing were all done in the car. When Yi Qian changed out of his pants, the peacekeepers carefully moved the central rearview mirror in the car. When Yi Qian put on the helmet and began to check the guns and ammunition, the peacekeepers heard the sound and adjusted the rearview mirror again. They have now found the small town of Cowell, which is close to the tropical rainforest. It's a 7-hour drive from the capital airport. We'll send you directly to Cowell now. There's also a map inside you can take a look. Chapter 42-34. Map? Yi Qian thanked him and immediately opened the side zipper of the camouflage bag. He took out the map and spread it on his lap to look at it. The location marked with a red pen is near the island where the 5 people went missing. Our special forces found the missing ship. There was no sign of fighting and it was not damaged. The fresh water and food on the ship were all taken away. Even the fuel in the ship was removed. With the missing ship as the center, our special forces searched 5 kilometers and found footprints. They were not messy, and there were no traces of blood along the way. Judging from the current situation, the safety of the 5 missing people is not much of a problem. Initial suspicion is that the crew and them planned the hijacking. If the hijacking experts, students, and interpreters wanted to kill people, they could have killed them directly when they hijacked the ship. Yi Qian asked, "Have you found the crew's family?" "No, he doesn't have a family," the peacekeeper said in a deep voice. "He is a crew member of a navigation company. He has always worked for the local navigation company. Sometimes, our peacekeeping force will also ask him to go out to sea. There has never been a problem." When the peacekeeper mentioned the crew, the eyes of the peacekeeper who spoke became much colder. "There are people marching and protesting in front," the peacekeeper who was driving suddenly whispered. Before Yi Qian could react, the peacekeeper who turned his head to talk to Yi Qian suddenly changed his expression. The car that was originally driving in a straight line quickly turned a corner and rushed into a side road where the houses on both sides were in ruins. The car was driving very fast. Even if there were abandoned bricks in front, it would still run over them. It was as if there was a mortar behind them and they had to get out of the effective range as soon as possible. Most of the demonstrations in Libya are controlled by illegal armed forces. They organize these poor and suffering people and give them $5 to $10 each. In less than a day, They can organize a demonstration of hundreds of people and use the people to put pressure on the parties. Sometimes there are casualties. The peacekeeper in the front passenger seat said with a solemn expression, "When we encounter a demonstration, our first choice is to avoid it. We must not have a head-on conflict with them." At the end of last year, the engineering team was building a bombed road to the train station. They were disturbed by illegal armed forces and finally chose to abandon the car and leave. When it came to the current situation in Libya, the two peacekeepers' expressions were particularly solemn. As soldiers, they naturally knew the cruelty of war. However, before they became peacekeepers, they had been living in a peaceful country. When they were really in a war-torn country, they had a deeper understanding of the word peace. Peace. It was hard to come by. Gunshots rang out beside them. Yi Qian looked back and saw the government troops in Libya's military uniforms and fired warning shots into the air with shields in their hand. Shields. This was the airport of Libya's capital. It was also the most important transportation hub in Libya. If even the airport was controlled by illegal militants, then the country would not be far from destruction. The two peacekeepers also heard the gunshot. They sighed and smiled bitterly. They had to calm. It was not Yi Jian's first time standing on the territory of a war-torn country, nor was it her first time witnessing a country's internal strife. Even though she had experienced it before, she still felt depressed when she faced it again. Chapter 42-35. The atmosphere in the car became a little heavy. Because the road conditions were very bad, the peacekeeper driving did not speak anymore and focused on driving. It was only when the gunshots could no longer be heard that the atmosphere in the car improved slightly. The situation in Libya was very complicated, and political instability was an important reason. At the end of the 1980s, civil war broke out in Libya, and the flames of war continued into the 21st century. The country was no longer a country, and families were no longer a family. All of the infrastructure was destroyed, and the economy was continuously experiencing negative growth. Even a decent road could not be found in Libya. When the peacekeepers sent by our country set foot on this land, their lives and deaths were closely related to this land. Faced with the looting of supplies by the illegal armed groups, the peacekeepers had to stand up and communicate with them. Looting supplies was considered a small matter, but threatening them with guns was a big deal. In less than 2 hours of driving from the airport to Cowell Town, Yi Qian encountered 4 incidents of chaos. There was a demonstration, a small-scale riot, a Western media van was hijacked by illegal armed groups, and in the end, they were paid to get out of trouble. There was also when they were forced to stop by a few black children with guns. The guns were real and there were not many bullets in them. Yi Qian bought the guns in the hands of the 2 children for $10. The child was very experienced and said in English, "It can help you get more dollars. A lot more than what you gave me." The infrastructure was destroyed, including schools. The situation in the big cities, such as the capital of Libya, was slightly better. Although the schools were destroyed, at least the students could still attend classes. In the small towns and villages that were more remote, the children there did not have any opportunity to go to school. There were no schools, no teachers, and they did not even have the right to go to school. Of the 10 children who hijacked Yi Qian's van, the oldest was 16 years old. He had learned to write his own name, his brother's name, and the 26 English letters. After that, he became the most educated child among the 10 children and also the leader of the children. He was a very smart child, but he was held back by his own country. Only when there is a country can there be a home, and only when there is a home can there be a country. If there is a day when the country is no longer a country, then the home will also not be a home. After paying $10 for the 2 SKS semi-automatic rifles, Yi Jian removed the magazines and broke them into parts. After driving for a while, she would throw a few parts out of the car. After driving for a while, she would throw a few parts out of the car. After driving for a while, she would throw a few parts out of the window. Took her 2 hours to throw all the parts out of the window. The SKS, which had a capacity of 10 rounds, had long been phased out. It was equivalent to an antique gun. He did not expect to see one here. Many of the obsolete guns were never investigated. They were all given to the people by illegal armed groups to coax the people into doing something for them. Here, people who have guns in their hands feel safer. When it came to the civil strife, the peacekeepers were also helpless. What they could do was within the scope of their duties. If they overstepped their boundaries, they would be targeted by the United Nations and cause trouble. The peacekeeper's heavy tone made Yi Qian purse her lip. She looked out of the car window with a cold expression. Civil strife was always the beginning of a country's division. It was also the beginning of a country's suffering. After a long time, Yi Qian said softly, "It will end one day. When this day is over, you will be able to return to your country." Chapter 42-36. The atmosphere in the car instantly relaxed because of Yi Qian's words. Returning home? That's right. Once things were on track, they would be able to return home. The first batch of peacekeepers to head to Libya smiled hopefully. Yes, we all hope that everything here will end as soon as possible. The basic operations of the country will start again. We will have a home to return to, books to read, things to do, and money to earn, don't worry. The hard times will pass. Hope is right in front of us. We just have to walk through it. The peacekeeper driving also smiled. My daughter said, "Dad, don't get tanned like the tanned uncle on TV. Before I return home, I have to work hard not to get tanned like that uncle." Libya was a small country in West Africa. It had a tropical monsoon climate with an average annual temperature of about 25 degrees Celsius. After the short rainy season, the sun was basically everywhere. It was very hot and very hot. The soldiers who came over were already tanned enough in China, but they were even darker here. As the topic of the country was brought up, the smiles on the 3 men's faces grew. Yi Qian, who was not good with words in the past, was now able to chat freely with the 2 peacekeepers he had only known for less than 2 hours. However, as the road became more complicated and they had to take detours sometimes, the smiles on their faces faded. They arrived at a small city. Before the car could enter the city, it was stopped by the government troops stationed there. The soldier in the front passenger seat motioned for Yi Qian to sit still while he got out of the car to communicate with the government troops who stopped them. The government troops could tell at a glance that these were peacekeepers sent by China. Some of the government troops were still very hostile to foreign troops entering their country, especially the indigenous black people of Libya. They were quite hostile to the arrival of foreign troops. The black man who stopped the car was an indigenous person. The peacekeeper got out of the car and tried to communicate with him. Instead, he pointed a gun at his head and roared fiercely. "Stay away from me, you guys with bad intentions. You are not allowed to enter this place. Stay away from me." After he finished his roar, he put 2 fingers in his mouth and blew a sharp whistle. Soon, Yi Jianjian saw 4 more black men running over with guns. Their military boots kicked up dust, and the heat wave hit them in the face. Yi Qian could already see their hands reaching into their camouflage bags, ready to take out their guns at any time. The peacekeeper sitting in the car said calmly, "Don't worry. The government troops will not dare to attack the peacekeepers. There will be a small conflict, but it will be over soon." Indeed, it passed very quickly. About 5 minutes later, the peacekeeper who had a gun pointed at his head returned. He was only 23 years old, and in less than a year of peacekeeping, he was already able to handle conflicts on his own. Sitting in the car, he said with a serious expression, "There's a conflict between the 2 parties. The situation in the city is not good. We need to take a detour." The young peacekeeper picked up the map and drew a line on the map. It will take at least 2 more hours to complete the detour. If we take this detour, we won't be able to reach the town as planned. The 2 peacekeepers looked grave. According to the original plan, they were supposed to arrive at Cowell Town around 6:30 p.m. and escort Yi Qian to meet up with our special forces. If they were to take a detour now, not only would they be delayed, but the dangers along the way would also increase. Libya wasn't safe during the day, let alone at night. Our country's peacekeepers only move within the barracks at night. Even the guards on guard duty will enter the barrack. This showed how dangerous Libya was at night. Chapter 42-37. Most importantly, they had already taken a detour for half an hour. Taking another detour, Yi Qian pursed his lips with a serious expression. If we don't get there before dark, we'll walk. What do you think? It was safer to walk at night. They could use the cover of the night to speed up their march. However, the distance was far. It was an hour's drive. With Libya's traffic conditions, other than the obstacles on the road, the entire journey wouldn't be fast. The better areas were about 80 yards, and the bumpy areas were about 30 to 40 yards. Even so, they could still drive about 50 kilometers in an hour. Walking 50 kilometers would take a little too long. But it was the best choice so far. However, there were bolder options. The older peacekeeper said, "The car can just drive blindly. The speed can be slowed down a little. If something really happens, abandon the car. If it takes too long to walk, the reinforcements from the special forces can wait, but the 5 missing people might not be able to." Yi Qian didn't even think about the crux of the problem. He nodded and agreed. Yi Qian added, "I've received night driving training. I can drive at night. Or I can drive from now on, but the speed might be a little too fast." Therefore, they received a female special forces soldier. Take a detour and walk out of sight of the government forces. Then you can drive. The older peacekeeper didn't think much about it and agreed with Yi Qian's suggestion. The young peacekeeper nodded and said, "Okay." The car started again. During the detour, Yi Qian and the 2 peacekeepers chatted from time to time. They didn't panic because of this. Libya's traffic was inconvenient. After the civil war, there were explosions and destruction. There were only a few roads that vehicles could pass on, so there weren't many choices. After taking a detour of about 3 kilometers, Yi Qian drove. After the car was parked, the older peacekeeper got out and sat in the back. Yi Qian thought for a few seconds after getting in the car. He said to the young peacekeeper sitting in the front passenger seat, "Sit in the back. It's safe." If the car was too fast and the road wasn't familiar, the front passenger seat was the most dangerous position. The young peacekeeper did not ask for the reason. He immediately unbuckled the seatbelt and sat in the back of the car. After Yi Qian started the car, he said, "For the sake of safety, fasten your seatbelts." Yi Qian had already sat in the back. The 2 peacekeepers looked at each other and fastened their seatbelts at the same time. Just as she said, the car was going a little too fast. After about 10 minutes of getting used to the car, the speed could not be said to be a little too fast, but it was quite fast. At this moment, the 2 peacekeepers understood why they were all sitting in the back and why they had to fasten their seatbelts. This speed. If they could drive at 40 kilometers per hour, the female soldiers could drive at 80 kilometers per hour. If they could drive at 80 kilometers per hour, the female soldiers could drive at 120 kilometers per hour. The entire speed was as fast as if they were driving on a national highway. Fortunately, they were able to bear it. Even if the road was bumpy, and they bumped into the roof of the car from time to time, the 2 peacekeepers sitting in the back persevered and did not ask Yi Qian to stop because of this. They knew that this was the only way they could reach Cowell Town as soon as possible according to the original plan. Yi Qian was speeding all the way, but the situation on Li Jinyan's side was not good. The militants under the NPFL had started another war in a small coastal town north of Cowltown. Chapter 4238. The civil war in Libya was initiated by the government forces established by the indigenous people and the patriotic forces led by the NPL leader. Since the end of the 1980s, the two factions were still fighting each other. Coupled with the intervention of illegal militants, the situation in Libya became even more chaotic. It was so chaotic that the civilians could not even maintain their normal lives. This time, the NRFL militants tried to take over the train station and port of the small coastal city north of Cowltown. They started the war at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, causing the small coastal city, which was originally calm, to be instantly plunged into a rain of bullets. Countless civilians had no time to react at all. They were killed under the power of rocket launchers, mortars, and other heavy weapons. The entire coastal city was shrouded in the Grim Reaper's shadow. The soaring smoke was like the shadow of the Grim Reaper, taking away one life after another. Li Jinyan, who was still waiting for Yi Qian, received the news that the small coastal city, Jenny City, had fallen into war. The news came from the construction squadron of the Chinese peacekeeping force stationed in Jenny City. Upon receiving the news, the construction team stationed in Cowltown immediately entered Level 1 combat readiness. Qing Niao hasn't arrived yet. Jenny City is in chaos. Should we enter Jenny City to search? The big merman who rushed into the tent had not yet stood still when his voice was heard. Jenny City, Cowltown, and several other villages are within our search range. Now that the war is chaotic, I'm afraid that the clues will be cut off again. According to the abandoned ships, the direction of the last footsteps and vehicle tires all pointed to Jenny City and Cowltown. Cowltown was inhabited by the local indigenous people, and several nearby villages were the focus of the Storm Commando's search. Now, they were waiting for Qing Niao to enter the villages to inquire about the situation. However, before they made any progress, a war broke out in Jenny City, which was close to Cowltown. If the missing commissioner, students, and interpreters were really in these two places, would they be relocated due to the outbreak of war? Li Jinyan was worried that they would be relocated. Jun Yen stared coldly at the military map spread on the folding table. His eyes were fixed on the places they were searching. Why did they kidnap the Chinese commissioner who supported Libya? What was their purpose? Why did they kidnap him from the seaside but not from the sea? Why did they take the land route? After taking the overland route to Jenny City and Cowltown, where would they go in the end? Li Jinyan, who was staring at the military map, had a cold look in his eyes. In the end, his gaze slowly swept along a railway line, and a dark light flashed in his dark eyes. Finally, his gaze locked onto the train station of Jenny City. It was also the only train station where trains could still travel normally. It was connected to the capital of Libya. If there were refugees who wanted to escape, most of them would take this train, which was protected by the government forces, to the capital. Further south, they would enter Libya's largest port. Then, since the people who kidnapped the Chinese representative abandoned the sea route and took the land route, then was it possible that they wanted to take the Chinese representative, the students, and the translator, by train? Leaving Libya by train? Or did he have other motives? No. They would not take the train out of Libya. If they really wanted to leave Libya, why would they take the extra route to Jenny? A peacekeeping soldier holding a Type 95 automatic rifle walked in. The moment he walked in, Li Jinyan's gaze froze. Chapter 4239. He turned his head and asked the Great Mermaid, "How many peacekeepers do we have in Jenny City?" The Great Mermaid was stumped. "I really don't know. I'll go and ask now." Reporting, there is a platoon of peacekeepers in Jenny City, and there is also a road maintenance engineer team, which is also a platoon of troops. The peacekeeper who came in reported the strength of the Chinese peacekeepers in Jenny City accurately. Li Jinyan's eyes moved slightly and asked in a deep voice, "How many peacekeepers are there in Corval Town?" "It's the same as Jenny City, with 2 platoons. Then there were a total of 4 platoons of troops, about 120 to 160 peacekeepers. It was not a large force, but it was enough to deter." Li Jinyan didn't ask the peacekeeper what the matter was. He had just found a clue, so he had to hurry up. His eyes became colder and colder as he asked again, "Have the NRFL militants ever proposed to negotiate with you?" "Twice, but they were stopped by the government forces." "Do you know what they want to negotiate about?" Li Jinyan asked one question after another, and the peacekeeper quickly answered, "The content is not clear. Our army does not participate in the confrontation between the 2 sides of other countries." Could it be that the NRFL militants who were fighting with the government forces had kidnapped the Chinese expert to complete the negotiation with the Chinese peacekeepers? If so, it could barely explain why they wanted to kidnap the Chinese personnel. It was just a barely explainable explanation, but the fundamental reason was still not valid. Kidnapping for the sake of negotiation, Li Jinyan felt that he had missed something. While he was still pondering, the peacekeeper had already told him what he was here for. 2 boys who ran outside the camp to ask the Chinese peacekeepers for help said that they saw several Chinese people sitting in a military truck in Jenny City. They received the latest news that the missing Chinese expert, trainee, and interpreter appeared in Jenny City at about 6:00 in the afternoon yesterday. They were sitting in a military truck, and the driver was an NPFL militant. The clues were provided by 2 boys around 16 or 17 years old. They fled from Jenny City to Corval Town and planned to walk to the capital. To be on the safe side, Li Jinyan took out several photos of unfamiliar faces for them to identify. One of them recognized the translator, Yang Heng, and the other recognized the expert. The 2 boys stayed behind in the Chinese construction camp in Cowell Town. Firstly, it was to protect them. Secondly, it was also to watch over them. Since they were the ones who spread the news, whether it was true or not, they would only know when they arrived. So far, the chaotic environment had made it very difficult for the Storm Commandos to conduct their search. Whether it was true or not, the fact that the 2 black boys recognized the interpreters, Yang Heng and Commissioner Miao, was enough proof. Before they set off, Li Jinyan told the captain of the engineering team in the construction camp to head to Yanni City as soon as the female soldiers supporting them arrived. He also left behind a wireless communication device that had already been set up. As long as they entered Yanni City, they would be able to locate them and contact them. When Li Jinyan and the others set off, they already knew that Yanni City was in chaos and that there was a lot of activity. However, they did not expect that they were still 17 kilometers away from Yanni City and had not yet passed through the tropical rainforest. The water demons of the Storm Commandos did not expect the civil strife in Yanni City to be a large-scale war. The scout, Big Eel, climbed up the tree with binoculars to get a better view. He looked around and then climbed down from the tree. Chapter 4240. When De Eel was about 2 meters away, he jumped up. He was wearing a desert combat suit and his face was covered in paint. He said to Li Jinyan, "The situation in front is not good. There are 6 spots of smoke. Jenny City is in chaos." Everyone's face suddenly darkened. The 3 of them were on alert. Li Jinyan quickly spread out the map. De Eel understood and knelt down on one knee. He pointed at the approximate location of the black smoke. "It's probably this area and this area. We entered the city because it's chaotic. The road into the city is also blocked. If we go there now, I'm afraid we won't find anything." There were no tracking devices on the missing people. Even if they were really in Jenny City, it would be impossible to find them immediately. Jenny City was so big. The only clue was to find the military truck that the 5 of them had taken yesterday. According to the 2 boys, they saw a military truck not far from the train station. Li Jinyan took off his combat glove. His slender fingers clenched a few times. Finally, he pointed at the train station and said, "Go straight to the train station." "You mean Commissioner Miao and the others might be hidden near the train station?" De Il asked. He lowered his head and stared at the military map. He frowned slightly and pointed at another area. "This is the port. To get to the train station, we have to cross the road outside the port. Is it possible to go to the port first?" "Impossible." Li Jinyan's cold voice was particularly firm. "Don't forget where they went missing." "Yes. The place where they went missing was at sea. If they were hidden in the port, they could have just sailed through the coastline and entered the port. There was no need to abandon the ship." "Okay, go directly to the train station." De Il nodded. It had been 4 days since Commissioner Miao and the others went missing. From the time they did not find any clues to the time they saw them last night, it was already enough to make them excited. At least they were still alive. But from last night to today at 4:46 p.m., it had been a day and a night. No one could guarantee that nothing had happened. They could only follow the only clue now and search as fast as they could. Fortunately, the Demon King's judgment was not wrong. From the time they found the missing ship to the small town of Cowell and Jenny City, they did not waste too much time searching. "They're still alive. Don't worry, they still want to negotiate with us." Seeing the anxiety in Big Eel's heart, Li Jinyan calmly said, "Since they have proposed to negotiate with China twice, it can be seen that they will not give up easily. They do not dare to kidnap the Chinese peacekeepers at will, for fear that the peacekeepers will resist and the situation will get out of control. That's why they picked Commissioner Miao, who wasn't wearing a military uniform." Commissioner Miao and the 3 students had gone to Libya as construction engineers. Therefore, they were all dressed casually. Thus, they became the targets of the NRPL. Li Jinyan pieced together all the clues he had, and the cause and effect of the whole thing was almost clear. So far, Yang Heng and the others had no problems. They were arranged to stay in an underground air raid shelter. The sound of gunfire could be heard from above, and dust kept falling from the air raid shelter. The 5 of them were locked in the air raid shelter, and the iron door in front of them was locked. There was no need to look at the situation outside. Just by listening, one could tell that something big had happened. However, the 5 of them had no idea. They had already tried to see if they could open the lock, but in the end, they failed. They could only stay where they were and wait for rescue. Chapter 42-41. Commissioner Miao, who was waiting for rescue, did not panic. Similarly, the 3 students did not panic either. Yang Heng had been in contact with different people since he was a child, so his state of mind was also very stable. Furthermore, the people who had captured them had said that they did not have any ill intentions and that they would be fine as long as they cooperated. Therefore, Yang Heng did not panic. Now, the bomb shelter seemed to be a little unstable. More and more layers of dust were falling, and the ground was shaking more and more frequently. It felt like the bomb shelter was about to collapse. Why did it feel like this place had become a war zone? Just as this thought flashed through Yang Heng's mind, he heard hurried footsteps in front of him. Yang Heng stood up immediately and looked ahead cautiously. The metal door opened, and Commissioner Miao and his group of 5 were urgently evacuated. Concentrated gunshots rang out from every corner of the city. In the gradually darkening sky, the bullets were like meteors falling from the sky, leaving trails of blood behind them. They were not far away from Cowell Town, less than 40 kilometers away. Yi Jian drove at full speed all the way. The 2-hour detour, coupled with the fact that the road was obstructed from time to time, Yi Jian relied on her excellent driving skills to make it back 1.5 hours later than the original plan. If everything went as smoothly as before, they would reach the town in about 30 to 40 minutes. The closer they got to the end, the more tense their expressions became. They did not relax just because they could reach the town as soon as possible. The sky was already dark and dusk was approaching. Yi Qian, who did not turn on his headlights, slowed down the car. Transportation in Libya was quite bad. The entire country was riddled with holes. Almost none of the roads that connected the various cities and towns were in good condition. The war had destroyed the land and destroyed the roads, especially the roads leading to the villages and towns. Before the Civil War broke out, the roads were filled with yellow dust and potholes. After the Civil War, the roads were even worse. The roads were full of bumps and potholes, either left by artillery shells or blocked by huge broken trees. Even with Yi Qian's excellent driving skills, there were a few times when the wheels of the car got stuck in the craters. As the sky darkened, they were about to enter Cowell Town, but they were intercepted by someone. Yi Qian stared at the checkpoint in front of him. There were only 2 wooden stalls, one on the left and one on the right. In the middle, there was a felled tree about the size of a child's arm. His eyes darkened. Fortunately, the sky was not completely dark yet. She could see the checkpoint in front of her from afar. Calling it a checkpoint was an exaggeration. She was sitting in the front and noticed it in advance, but the 2 peacekeepers who were in charge of observing the left and right didn't notice it. Although they didn't notice it immediately, they immediately sensed that something was wrong. The speed of the car slowly decreased from 60 km per hour to 50 km per hour, and then to 10 km per hour. Yi Qian, who was staring straight ahead, rolled down the car windows on both sides. The hot wind from the day blew into the car. With a cold gaze, she asked the 2 peacekeepers, "When you came over, did you do such a check?" "Yes, Cowville Town and Yani City are both controlled by the government forces. They are very cautious." He was an old squad leader with the surname Feng. He was part of the first batch of peacekeepers sent to Libya. The young peacekeeping soldier's surname was He Wei. He was the soldier that squad leader Feng led in China. Chapter 42-42. Their answers did not make Yi Qian feel relieved. Before they got close, she asked again, "How's the government's attitude towards our army?" "Not bad. We can get along peacefully." Squad leader Feng answered without thinking. The soldiers who came to maintain peace would not interfere with the government's affairs. Naturally, both sides would get along peacefully. Yi Qian did not feel peace from the 4 armed men who walked over. On the contrary, she smelled blood from the wind that blew into the car. It was very faint. As the twilight wind blew, the faint smell of blood dissipated in an instant. Yi Qian's eyes darkened. Even her voice was tense. "I'm afraid there's something wrong with them. Be prepared." Squad leader Feng was about to get out of the car to communicate with the government soldiers when he heard this. He opened the car door and closed it again. The Special Forces' intuition was better than theirs. Just like now, his intuition told him that he should believe the female soldier's words. "I'll act according to the circumstances. I'll be ready to charge at any time," Yi Qian said as she closed the car windows and put down the handbrake again. She was ready to charge at any time. Also, don't get out of the car. They did not come with good intentions. Regardless of whether they were government soldiers or not, they must not get out of the car. Squad leader Feng said softly, "Okay, I'll ask them first. Be prepared to charge at any time." It was already late at night. It was not safe. Even if they were government soldiers, Squad leader Feng did not want to get out of the car to communicate. Safety was the most important thing. It was best to be careful. The 4 armed men walked over. 2 of them stood in front of the car. One of them patted the hood of the car and stood in the front passenger seat. Then, he realized that there was no one in the front passenger seat and retreated to the back door. The other knocked on the car window and signaled for Yi Qian to get out of the car and talk to him. Squad leader Feng, who was sitting behind Yi Qian, put down the car window. Because he was vigilant, he did not put down all the windows. He only put down half of them and introduced himself. "Hello, I'm..." Before squad leader Feng could finish his sentence, Yi Qian did not hesitate anymore. She released the brake and stepped on the accelerator. The car rushed out with a roar. Bang! Bang! With two loud bangs, Yi Qian rammed into two black men who had been aiming their guns at the car. The car shook violently, and the left wheel ran over one of the black men's body, and the car sped several meters away. The moment squad leader Feng put down the windshield to speak, Yi Qian could smell the thick stench of blood. At the same time, she saw from the rearview mirror that the black man standing at the back door on the right side of the car made a gesture. It was a gesture for shooting. Without any hesitation, Yi Qian didn't care if there were people standing in front of the car. With a ruthless look in his eyes, he drove the car straight through. That was not an ordinary person. It was her enemy. Yi Qian would never show mercy to his enemies. He stepped on the accelerator and the man was sent flying. At the same time, gunshots were heard. Hold on tight. It wasn't the government army just now. They wanted to kill us. In the car, Yi Qian said calmly. Just now, they wanted to rob the car and kill us. If Yi Qian, who was driving, hadn't seen these people's unfriendly gazes and stepped on the brakes even when the car came to a stop, they would have been killed by the people who were shooting from behind. There were only two kinds of people who dared to shoot peacekeepers. One was Libya's illegal armed forces, and the other was Libya's indigenous people who were very hostile to peacekeepers from other countries. Even if they were peacekeepers from Western countries, they would not kill them without hesitation. Chapter 42-43. The gunshots chased after the back of the car, and the bullets hit the back windshield of the car. With a crash, the windshield shattered and scattered along the back of the car. Some of the broken glass even splashed onto the two peacekeepers who were hiding behind the car seat. He Wei's face was a little pale. Although they had gone to Libya for peacekeeping, they had not been in such immediate danger and were being chased by bullets. I'm going through the checkpoint. Yi Qian did not pay attention to the people behind her. She stopped about 40 meters away from the checkpoint. Now there were gunshots behind her, and the people in front also raised their guns. Perhaps they thought that their companions would be able to successfully hijack the car and kill them, but these people were not prepared. Yi Qian's sudden attack stunned them for a moment. When they reacted, they had already raised their guns and opened fire. The speeding car was just inches away. Bang! Another heavy crash was heard. The simple checkpoint was directly hit by Yi Qian, especially the tree. Not only was it hit by Yi Qian, but it also knocked down several people on the left side who had raised their guns. This was not a light collision. Some people were directly hit in the head by the tree and fell to the ground on the spot. A few people were luckier. They could still hear the sound of pain when they were knocked down. The people on the right side were much luckier. The tree trunk that had been knocked down did not hit them. They quickly dodged and watched the car fly past them. While cursing, they raised their guns and all of them fired at the car. Don't let them pass. Kill them! Kill them! Yi Qian heard the angry roars of defeat. The car had already rushed through the checkpoint and chased after the people behind. The two peacekeepers lowered their bodies. Their bodies swayed especially hard as the car continued to shake. He Wei secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the female soldier who was driving just now was alert. When the car was stopped, she did not pull the handbrake. She only stepped on the brakes. The moment the other party suddenly raised their guns, the car instantly rushed out with a bang. It's not over yet. Hold on tight. Yi Qian, who was driving, once again saw the people in front with guns raised. This time, they learned to be smart. They did not stand in the middle of the road. Instead, they stood on both sides and fired. Don't raise your head, press it down. With both hands on the steering wheel, Yi Qian stared straight ahead with a cold look in her eyes. She stepped on the accelerator again and drove the car in a zigzag pattern. The bullets came straight from the front, leaving several bullet holes in the car door and the front of the car. 2 bullets hit the front windshield, and the whole glass shattered with a whoosh sound. This time, the glass shards did not roll out of the car. They all splashed into the car. Yi Qian's chin was grazed by a piece of glass, leaving a bloody cut on his chin. Blood seeped out from the cut on his skin. The people in front did not stop the car. Yi Qian, who had no idea what the road ahead was like, gritted his teeth and stepped on the accelerator. At the same time, he turned on the headlights. The strong high-beam headlights would make people temporarily blind. Yi Jian would also flash the high-beam headlights from time to time. If someone in front of her opened fire, they could only shoot blindly. Yi Qian, who was in a blind shooting position, only needed to drive the car out of the snake shape and lower her body to minimize the risk of being shot in the front. However, reducing the risk to the minimum did not guarantee her safety. The car's fuel tank was punctured, and the fuel gauge disappeared one by one. Yi Qian's expression became more and more serious. They had to abandon the car. Chapter 42-44. She had wanted to drive into the mountains filled with tropical trees, but the car was running out of fuel. They had to abandon the car. Grabbing the Type 95 rifle and the camouflage bag with 2 magazines left, Yi Qian yelled, "Jump!" The 3 of them opened the car door at the same time. Abandoning the car with a leaking fuel tank, the 3 of them ran as fast as they could in an escape route. Naturally, they couldn't run along the road as that would make them live target. They chose to run off the road. They saw a few trees and thought they would find a place to hide, but when they reached a few scattered trees, the 3 of them came to an emergency stop. They were now on top of a slope, and below them was a village with smoke curling up from it. Running into the village would increase their chances of escaping, but the people chasing them were armed. If they couldn't find the 3 of them, there was a high chance they would shoot at civilians. Killing innocent people was a common occurrence in Libya, which was a civil war. There was another reason. Who knew if the village was a bandit's nest? Although there were some twists and turns along the way, overall they were fine. However, they were being chased not far from this village. There was no harm in being more careful. The 3 of them didn't discuss it, but they all made a decision at the same time. Yi Qian yelled, "Run forward!" The 2 peacekeepers said at the same time, "Run forward!" There was no communication, not even eye contact. The 3 of them gritted their teeth and ran into the forest ahead. If there were no accidents, they would have driven into the forest by now. After passing through the tropical forest, they would arrive at the small town of Cowell, about 10 kilometers away. The 3 of them didn't run together. Instead, they ran about a meter apart. They couldn't fight back and didn't even have a place to hide. The best thing to do was to run faster and widen the range of the bullet. When Yi Qian abandoned the car, he was about 500 meters away from the unknown pursuers. The fuel tank was hit, and the car couldn't be driven anymore, so they had no choice but to abandon the car. Although there were gunshots behind them, the range was too far. They wouldn't be hurt for a while. Therefore, they could still run. They had to grit their teeth and use all the physical strength they had accumulated over the years as a soldier to run as fast as they could. Right now, they couldn't fight the enemy head-on. They didn't have enough manpower and ammunition, so they could only think of a way to escape. Yi Qian had participated in many actual battles, but this was the first time she had been chased like this, and she didn't even have the strength to fight back. This made her eyes so cold that they seemed to be covered with a layer of ice. They were still quite a distance away from the forest. Fortunately, the sky had darkened and the darkness of the night became their cover, causing the pursuers to lose sight of their target. However, they did not give up. Instead, they continued to shout and shout. A dilapidated truck rushed out from the side of the road. It was so dilapidated that only one side of the truck's headlights could be seen. It picked up the people who were chasing after Yi Qian and the other 2. The rumbling of the car's motor and the fierce and arrogant roars of the people came from afar as the dilapidated truck chased after them. When Yi Qian and the other two heard the sound of a car approaching, their expressions turned even more serious than before. This time, they were in trouble. Split up and run. At this moment of life and death, squad leader Feng shouted at Yi Qian from behind, "Go straight to the town. The Chinese peacekeeping forces camp is there. You'll be safe once you get there. Leave them to me and He Wei." Chapter 42-45. The three of them continued to move forward, but the enemy had a car. None of them could escape. The best way was to scatter and run, and give the opportunity to escape to the female soldiers who came to support them. When Yi Qian heard this, she turned her head and said without thinking, "Split into two groups. I'll lure them away." But it was too late. Squad leader Feng rushed to the side of the road alone. He planned to lure the car away by himself. Yi Qian's eyes suddenly turned ruthless. This won't do. Squad leader Feng will be in trouble. Yi Qian didn't even think. She rushed to the side of the road and rushed towards squad leader Feng, who was behind her. The car hadn't arrived yet, but the dim headlights shone over from the winding road. Yi Qian held squad leader Feng's wrist tightly and said word by word, "Leave it to me. I'll take care of it. You guys ambush on both sides. I'll shoot their driver and the headlights. As long as we take care of these two things, we'll have more time." As Yi Qian spoke, she started to move. She was running back. This made squad leader Feng and He Wei, the two peacekeepers, shocked. Why was she running back? Squad leader. He Wei was so anxious that he was sweating even more. Squad leader Feng said in a deep voice, "Follow the orders. Follow her." Now was the time for real combat. They only had actual combat exercises in China and lacked real combat experience. Since the female soldier who returned was entrusted with this important task, she must have real combat experience that they lacked. The female soldier in front of them was very likely a female Special Forces soldier who had been on a real battlefield and could quickly fight from a disadvantage. Squad leader Feng and He Wei didn't have much time to think, nor did they have much time to think. Yi Jian, who had excellent mobility, had quickly laid prone on the uneven road. Her cover was a slope. "You guys cover me." Yi Qian laid prone and loaded the gun. Her finger was already on the trigger. She didn't give the two of them a chance to regret. She didn't want squad leader Feng to risk his life to lure the enemy away. If that was the case, she might as well take the risk. "He Wei, cover me." Squad leader Feng, who was sweating profusely, didn't have time to think. His voice was so heavy that it could make a hole in the ground. He only had time to carry out his orders. The two of them lay prone on the grass on both sides of the road. Similarly, they had no cover. Fighting the enemy head-on without any cover was the most dangerous battle. However, the three of them had no other choice. They were at least 2 kilometers away from the forest. There was no way they could run in. As such, he could only give it his all. Yi Jian was betting on the fact that she could shoot twice as fast as the others. She was betting on her shooting accuracy. The dilapidated truck that was on the verge of being scrapped bounced up and down the road. Its dim headlights swayed as it approached. When the front of the truck tilted up the slope and then down again, Yi Qian's slender fingers instantly pulled the trigger. The reason why she came back was to find an advantage in a disadvantage, and her current shooting position was the advantage she found. There were 2 slopes in front of her, and she was on the third one. As the truck tilted up and down, the driver's vision would be affected. She fired from a slight advantage. The front windows of the truck were usually 5 mm tempered or 3+2 laminated. The 5.8 mm ammunition of the Type 95 automatic rifle could penetrate an 8 mm steel plate within 100 meters and still have some lethality. The lethality of the rifle combined with her current shooting position was what Captain Xia said. Find an advantage in a disadvantage and counterattack. Chapter 42-46. On the battlefield, Yi Jian's psychological resistance to pressure was quite strong. Some people would shrink back when they were under pressure, but Yi Jian would be more excited when she was under pressure. Just like in her previous life, even if she was harmed by Ying and had no place to stay, she would still grit her teeth and live on. Yi Qian, who pulled the trigger, knew that he had no other choice but to fight back. No matter how fast they ran, they couldn't outrun a car with 4 wheels. There was no way they could outrun it, so they could only fight back. The bullet tore through the air like a meteor with a fiery tail. Wherever the bullet passed, it seemed to tear the air into 2 parts. The 3+2 tempered glass of the car was pierced through, and the driver fell to the ground. The Grim Reaper had quietly arrived at his side without any warning. Blood flowed out from his right eye socket, and at the same time, a white, bloody blob of something fell out of his right eye socket. The car was 90 meters away, and Yi Qian couldn't see the target clearly. She shot the driver in the car. It wasn't a direct hit to the forehead, but the bullet pierced through the driver's right eye. The bullet then went through the driver's head and he died. The guy in the car with him widened his eyes in shock. He heard the gunshot, and now he realized that his comrade had been shot. Then, the truck lost control of the driver and went out of control. The truck was so broken that the sound of the engine was especially loud. Even the sound of the gunshot was drowned out by the rumbling of the engine. The guy in the car held the steering wheel with one hand and raised the gun with the other. He didn't realize what had happened, but he knew that the car was out of control. F***CK. What are you doing? Thinking that it was a joke, someone knocked on the roof of the car with the butt of the gun. The guy in the car was so shocked that he yelled the driver's name. He rushed over and tried to control the steering wheel, but the car suddenly lost control. It twisted a few times and went straight to the side of the road. Another bullet pierced through the air. This time, the bullet hit the headlights of the truck. The dim headlights went out, and the darkness of the night once again enveloped the area. Squad leader Feng and He Wei heard a rumbling sound in front of them that sounded like a car had flipped over. They didn't even have time to fire a single bullet, and they didn't even realize that Yi Qian had finished shooting. They heard the female soldier shout, "Retreat!" Now was the time to retreat. Retreat immediately into the forest. They didn't know how many soldiers the enemy had, so they couldn't waste time here. If they could avoid it, they would. If they couldn't, they would fight. Now, they had gained more time to escape. Squad leader Feng, who was lying in the shallow grass by the side of the road, jumped up. He Wei, retreat. The 2 figures quickly approached Yi Qian. They needed to enter the forest as soon as possible. Only by entering the forest would the danger level decrease. When He Wei ran close to squad leader Feng, he swallowed a mouthful of saliva and hurriedly said, "Squad leader, I heard 2 gunshots just now. They were so far away, but she actually hit the driver. It was too terrifying." When the distance was about 100 meters, the female soldier really hit the driver with the Type 95 rifle. How did she identify the target? How was he able to shoot accurately within the maximum range of the 95 rifle? Squad leader Feng's shock was no less than He Wei's, but now was not the time for the 2 of them to ask each other questions. Run, seize the time to run, that was what they needed to do the most right now. Chapter 42-47. In front of them, the truck overturned. There were more than 20 people in the truck. Except for a few who reacted quickly and jumped out, the rest of the people overturned with the truck. Fortunately, both sides of the road were flat. Even if the truck overturned, it didn't cause too many casualties. 2 people were quite unlucky. They were crushed by the truck and died on the spot. A few others were crushed by the truck and screamed in pain. Most of them managed to climb out by themselves. Chase! Chase! The illegal militants who climbed out with only minor injuries roared angrily. They did not deal with their companions who were screaming under the truck. Instead, they picked up their guns and chased after them. Cowl Town and Yenny City would belong to them. No one would be allowed to enter, not even the peacekeepers. That was where their kingdom would be. These unidentified guys were illegal militants who split from the original indigenous people. Libya was in chaos. The lawless people who wanted to become the ruler of the country took advantage of the chaos and began to kill. The government forces and the NRPL militants had to fight these separatists. Now, Yeni City was in a three-way war. No one would back down. Everyone wanted to win. In the road construction engineering camp of the Chinese peacekeeping force in Yeni City, a black child handed a crumpled envelope to a peacekeeping soldier who was preparing for war. The letter was written by a leader of the NRPL militants. He clearly expressed his intention. He asked the Chinese peacekeeping force to evacuate Yeni City and Cowell Town. He did not want to have any friction with the Chinese. This was the main reason why the NRPL had always wanted to negotiate with the Chinese. They did not want the Chinese peacekeeping force to appear in Cowell Town and Yeni City. At the same time, the letter also expressed his hope that the Chinese side would step in and ask the government forces to withdraw. As long as the Chinese side did what they asked, the Chinese engineers and translators they invited would be sent back safely. This was the latest news about the target. In other words, the missing Commissioner Miao and the other four were not in danger. Mr. Miao's identity as an electromagnetism specialist was not revealed by the Chinese side. He and another electromagnetism specialist brought 3 students to Libya. They entered as construction engineers. Only Mr. President knew about their identities. Even the officials around Mr. President did not know about it. Now, the NRPL clearly told them that the missing Commissioner Miao and the other 4 were kidnapped by them. The Chinese peacekeeping force immediately contacted China through email. As for the president, the Chinese peacekeeping force did not want to tell him. The president would not cooperate with the NRPL's request, and Commissioner Miao and the other 4 who had fallen into the hands of the NRPL militants would meet with misfortune. The latest news arrived in China along with the mail. About 10 minutes later, Li Jinyan's satellite communicator received the latest news. Li Jinyan and the other 12 water ghosts who had snuck into Yeni City were hiding in the ruins of a building that had been bombed by a cannonball. When they received the latest news from their country, their previous speculation was confirmed. Now they only needed to find Commissioner Miao and his group of 5. As for Qing Miao, Li Jinyan pursed his lips lightly. If he could find Commissioner Miao and the others tonight, Qing Miao wouldn't have to come to their aid. There would be no need for her to enter the village to inquire about the situation. As the eldest brother, Li Jinyan did not wish for his only sister to be caught in the flames of war. The flames of war were merciless, and he could not guarantee that his sister would be able to retreat safely. Chapter 42-48. In Li Jinyan's plan, he only wanted his sister to infiltrate the village as a female soldier to gather information. Other than that, Li Jinyan didn't have any other plans. He didn't want it to happen, but it didn't mean it wouldn't happen. Yi Qian was already exchanging fire. After entering the forest, she was already exchanging fire with the illegal militants. There were at least 2 platoons of soldiers, but they only had 3 people. This is the only way into Cowell Town and Yeni City. Now that it's controlled by the illegal militants, I'm guessing something happened in Cowell Town and Yeni City. Squad leader Feng panted heavily and said in a tense voice, "They're all illegal militants. I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to get there." It wasn't that they were afraid of it, but it was already very difficult. They didn't have enough soldiers and firepower. The enemy had 2 platoons of soldiers. Yi Qian was facing the biggest problem in her military career. "We can't continue exchanging fire with them." Yi Qian tightened her grip on the rifle and said coldly, "We don't have enough ammunition. If we continue exchanging fire, it'll be very disadvantageous for us. We can only retreat now." Squad leader Feng agreed. They couldn't fight recklessly. 3 people against at least 2 platoons of soldiers. They couldn't rely on firepower to win. Squad leader Feng, He-Wei, you two retreat first. I'll cover you. Don't worry about me. I can protect myself. Yi Qian finished in one breath and didn't give squad leader Feng a chance to speak. I'm good at night battles and individual battles. I'll cover you. You two retreat. Squad leader Feng's pupils contracted. He lowered his voice and said, No, you're here to save people. You should go to the town immediately. I'll cover you. You and He-Wei retreat. He-Wei, who was in charge of security, turned his head and said firmly, I'll cover you. Squad leader Feng, you take the female soldiers and retreat. Squad leader Feng had a wife and a daughter, but he was fine. Listen to my arrangements, He-Wei. I'm good at night battles. At the same time, I have actual combat experience. My greatest experience was stepping on corpses. So, I'll cover you. You and squad leader Feng retreat. Stop talking nonsense. Stop wasting time. Yi Qian's last sentence sounded like a string of snowballs. He-Wei's lips pressed into a straight line. I don't want to waste any more time. Squad leader Feng, take your soldiers and retreat immediately. After Yi Qian finished speaking, she instantly dashed out, not giving the 2 peacekeepers a chance to speak. The forest was terrifyingly quiet. It was so quiet that one could hear their hearts beating in panic. He-Wei's eyes were red and he said in a low voice, Squad leader, you retreat, I'll stay. We can't let her cover for us alone. Squad leader Feng's lips trembled as he tried to hold it in. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, He-Wei, retreat. His voice was choked with sobs. Yi Qian, who was good at night battles and individual battles, was not afraid of facing 2 platoons of soldiers alone. She also did not think that she would fall here. As long as there was no exchange of fire, she could fight her way out. They were good at night battles and assassinations. She was confident that she could deal with these people. After coming out from the hiding spot, Yi Qian stayed at least 5 or 6 meters away from squad leader Feng and He-Wei before making any noise. The leaves rustled, and the illegal militants who had entered the forest to search screamed as they chased after Yi Qian. Let's go! They chased after Yi Qian. Squad leader Feng and He-Wei immediately retreated. They had to hurry back to the barrack. They had to bring reinforcements to the female soldiers. There was the smell of blood in the wind. Yi Qian, who was fighting alone, was like the grim reaper in the forest. She used the combat dagger in her hand to fiercely stab into her target's neck. Then she sliced it sideways, severing the aorta, trachea, and vocal cords. There was no chance of survival. Chapter 42-49. Yi Qian did not completely expose herself. She was only trying to buy time for squad leader Feng and He-Wei to escape. She did not plan to kill the 2 platoons by herself. That would take too much time and expose that she was fighting alone. Once these people realized that she was hiding, they would set up their guns and shoot blindly into the forest. Even if she was extremely skilled, it would be difficult for her to escape. 20 minutes later, Yi Qian, who had killed 6 people, began to retreat. There was enough time. She believed that squad leader Feng and He-Wei had already escaped safely. In the forest, the illegal militants had already discovered that their comrades had died. Strange screams came from all directions. The entire forest was filled with the sound of rustling leaves. There was an uproar of people, shocked and angry. Damn it! Come over quickly! They killed our comrades! They killed our comrades! Someone shouted angrily. He was so angry that his blood vessels felt like they were about to burst. Brewer! Brewer! Those damn Chinese peacekeepers, they killed Brewer! I want to kill them! I want to kill them! The entire forest was in chaos. The 2 platoons had discovered that their comrades had fallen. They rushed over, the leaves rustling, and the sound of branches breaking could be heard. They must be nearby, they must still be nearby, find them. Find them quickly. Everyone be careful, everyone be careful. Chaotic footsteps could be heard. They no longer had the arrogance they had when they charged into the forest. Instead, they were nervous. 2 people would have their backs to each other, and 3 people would have 1 person in front and 2 behind. The silent deaths of 6 people had cast a shadow over them. It made them tense. They were no longer as daring as before because they had more people. Yi Qian, who was hiding in the tree, slowly came down. Step by step, she retreated from their encirclement. Now it was her chance to escape. Yi Qian was not in a hurry. She chose the safest way to retreat. She lightened her footsteps and left this group of illegal militants without making a sound. The smell of blood in the forest was very strong. The assassination method Yi Qian used was also the most common assassination method used by the Snowfield Brigade Special Forces. It was a cut to the throat. Cutting across the neck, the main artery was the first to be severed. The blade then went deep into the throat, severing the vocal cords and trachea one by one. Just like that, 6 people were quietly taken care of. The silent assassination angered the illegal militant. After searching for a few minutes, they found another comrade who had been killed. This time, the anger in their hearts was completely ignited. They no longer just searched normally. They directly used guns. They raised the guns in their hands and fired blindly at the woods like firecrackers. They must still be nearby. Kill them! Kill them! Don't let them escape! Damn it, Libya doesn't need their help. Roaring angrily, they, who had lost their minds, began the most familiar slaughter. The bullets pierced through the trees and cut off the leaves. The sharp shards of the trees and the fresh, green leaves fluttered down onto Yi Qian's head and body. The blind attacks forced Yi Qian to be unable to continue retreating, and he could only lie down for the time being. The bullets whizzed past above Yi Qian's head. Countless gunpowder fell down and soon covered Yi Qian's back with a thin layer of gunpowder. After blindly shooting for at least 5 minutes, the firecracker-like noises in the woods finally stopped. Someone began to speak. Libya's language was English. Although the accent was heavy, Yi Qian could understand it. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.